and calling to order the February 24th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded.
Unmute.
So that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, dial 408-650-3123 with access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/235-235-861. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this committee are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along. Please note this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is there anyone else also recording? Seeing none, please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we have three individuals signed up for public comment. Well, we have a very full agenda today, and public comment is limited to 3 minutes, so please try to stay within that time frame. I will start with Mr. Tatro.
Hear ye, hear ye. Citizen petition for writ of habeas corpus. To all ye who shall know these presents, greetings. I, Robert J. Tatro of 4 Ridgewood Drive, Auburn, Massachusetts, located in the county of Worcester and within the official confines and borders of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby issue the citizen's writ of habeas corpus to State Senator Michael O. Moore of Millbury and State Representative Paul Frost of Auburn, both duly elected officials of the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You both shall simultaneously appear in these public chambers of the Auburn Town Hall on a date to be determined without delay or hesitation, and shall not exceed more than 4 business days from today. Upon your appearance, you both shall state your positions on Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40B, whether you support or are in conflict with the current law, and your reasoning. Should you stand in opposition of the aforementioned law, you are expected to present your plan of action and/or legislation to repeal, overturn, or rewrite the law in accordance with the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You may not send a representative, written or electronic statement, or suggest an alternative means of conveyance of your responses. You are to forthwith contact the office of the acting Auburn Town Manager to arrange the public hearing, at which time members of the general public and residents of Auburn will be publicly notified, welcome to attend, and have the opportunity to engage you both in person. The hearing will be recorded in accordance to all other public meetings and will be maintained for posterity. I respectfully volunteer my services to facilitate the meeting, issued this 24th day of February in the year of our Lord 2025, in accordance to all applicable laws of the Commonwealth and the historic tradition of the United States of America. Signed, Robert J. Tatro, 4 Ridgewood Drive, Auburn, Massachusetts, 01501. When I joined the Marine Corps, I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And when I later joined the Sheriff's Office, I took that same oath, but it was modified for the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I've watched this board negotiate in good faith for 6 months, only to have an applicant walk away. The zoning board, who I am not representing this evening, has also had to endure this for over 5 months, but we had to endure an additional 3 accusations of open meeting law violations, and we've endured the basically watching our town and our community being torn apart through arguments. So it's time for the elected officials to step up. They can't hide in the crowd anymore. It's not going to work. You're going to have to come here. You're going to have to be accountable to the people that pay you and elect you. So you can decide, are you going to be with the people in Boston, the Redcoats, or are you going to be with us out here in the towns, the Colonials? Because it's pretty simple. You're going to have to decide which side you're on. So with that being said, I thought it was appropriate to throw down an old school political slap, let them know
Pedro?
it's time to get busy.
3 minutes is up. Thank you so much.
I'll leave this here for you.
Thank you. Mr. Largess.
Danny Largess, 39 Perry Place. I got a question to the board, and the ZBA is kind of lacking information that I'm kind of, I don't know what to say. I don't know how they are doing it. On map 18, parcel, let me get this here right, just so I don't make a mistake here. Parcel 22 is town-owned property. Is the town ready to relinquish this property to the Venacasa Building, 16 Perry Place LLC? Because I don't remember it coming in front of town meeting. There was, correct me what the year was, but there was a gentleman behind Julia Bancroft, and they made him buy a parcel of land that he took and maintained for like 50 years. Now, all of a sudden, your map, your book downstairs, the town's going to let this builder use their property for profit to collect $5.8 million a year? Is the town just giving this property up? Because I'd like to stake some area out in the town that I want. And I'm not going to make profit on it. And I just want to know how it got this far without the ZBA even knowing about this. Can anybody answer that question tonight?
This is just a public comment. It's not a
Well-
question and answer period. It's certainly something we could look into and get back to you.
Well, I think we need to take care of this before the next ZBA meeting. Do you need this map? I just got it from downstairs.
I made some notes and we can look into it.
Okay, so when are we going to hear by this? Because I think it's very important that it's done before the next ZBA meeting.
We'll certainly look into it.
Okay. I'd like a parcel right in front of the high school so I can set up a little coffee cart there if this is going to go through. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Rafferty.
Before I start, Madam Chairman, I'd just like to wish get well to Mr. Corain. I understand he hurt himself, and I was very sorry to hear that because I think he's a valuable asset to the town. I'm here to go on record as saying that Bob Tatro and the Zoning Board of Appeals cannot do their job. How can they not do their job? Let me count the ways. They routinely violate open meeting law. Bob Tatro led the effort to eliminate hybrid meetings despite the Board of Selectmen's objection. Mr. Tatro, in response to neighborhood opposition to oppressive Chapter 40B projects and the neighborhood opposition to special permit exemptions sought by businesses, declares out loud in public constantly that there is nothing the ZBA board can do because the state will overturn them or they will be sued in court, making them a foregone conclusion before it actually happens. This essentially communicates to businesses and developers that the ZBA are pushovers and will not act to defend the property rights of residents. The ZBA's most recent decision, under his leadership, was to deny a special permit for a recycling center in the middle of a residential neighborhood at the first meeting because there were too many negative issues impacting the residents. However, at the first appeal of that decision, the ZBA completely reversed itself and awarded the permit on the promise from the company that they would be a good neighbor and abide by some restrictions. Then at the second appeal, and with a notice of intent to sue from that company, the company wanted more restrictions lifted, despite oppositions from abutters who also informed the chair that they had not been properly notified, which is an open meeting violation, the ZBA lifted the restriction. This despite board members like Ms. Roach of Roche and Wren Law Firm being on record adamantly stating that the restrictions were absolutely necessary for the good of the neighborhood. Now, facing multiple Chapter 40B projects flooding into town, Bob Tatro is requesting that the town adopt a building moratorium. Why? Because Bob and the ZBA are overwhelmed and can't handle the problem and are probably afraid of the public reaction. I urge you to grant Bob's request for relief because a disaster is waiting on Auburn's doorstep and the ZBA is clearly unable to handle it. The town's low-income housing will triple from 5 to 15% in a few short years, overwhelming potentially department budgets, including school, police, fire, and public works. Had Julie Jacobson addressed housing during her tenure, we would not be in this mess. Selectmen also need to consider muzzling town council from giving premature opinions to ZBA decisions that manipulate their judgment in favor of businesses. After attending a recent Chapter 40B seminar where the instructor stated that developers hate to go to the state because it is a bureaucratic nightmare, Bob Tatro once again stated there was nothing the ZBA could do because the state will overturn our decision. So, Selectmen, the ZBA and Bob need your help, and that was obvious by his presentation tonight. So I would recommend that you vote for the building moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Moving along, we have no community organizations. We do have a public hearing. Is the applicant here?
Madam Chair, make a motion to reconvene the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Do we know if the applicant is here or if he's online?
I don't see him online.
Okay.
He was supposed to send somebody.
Yeah, there was supposed to be a representative in person, I believe. Is there anybody in person for the application? For Taku Sakai? Oh, hi. Did you want to come up? You can either at the podium or in the chair if you prefer. It's
fine.
Okay. Could you just give us an overview of your application and what you're planning?
We are supposed to be making simple drinks such as teas, coffees, and like mixes of drinks that we already have pre-prepared in our store, as well as preparing pre-made ramen cups in our store for customers during operational hours.
Okay, thank you. Do members of the public have questions? Do board members have questions?
So I believe the fire chief had concerns about the hours of operations. Looks like this application has some hours of operations listed on it. I'd just like the fire chief to go on record and say if he approves of these hours.
Thank you. Through the chair, the applicant did speak with the fire prevention office and they've agreed to amend their hours that they will hold the same operating hours as the mall. So they will not be extending the hours before their, or I should say after their normal operating period.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have questions? Is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Is there a motion on the application?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Thank you so much. Your license is approved. Moving along, we have a departmental item. It's a request by DPIS.
Good evening. So I am here before the board to let you know that the town of Auburn was invited to a recent meeting for the discussion of negotiating a new contract for wind waste, also known as the Wheelabrator contract. So there is an existing town of Auburn contract with wind waste. It's an 20-year-old contract. It was entered into back in 2006. And it's a unique situation because there's not too many times that you have a contract for this long. It is allowed through 30B, so Mass General Law allows contracts to go that length of time with town meeting approval, and we did actually have town meeting approval for this contract. So there's approximately about 37 towns that were included in the original contract, and the towns have been collaborating for a meeting recently to talk about putting our efforts together to be able to sit down and speak with Wind Waste going forward. Our existing contract is good until the end of 2017, so we have some time. This is a good situation to be in because of the collaborative of towns. And it was actually kind of nice for me to hear. The people that were coordinating are not aware that there's any other collaborative that's this large. So we have before you a request for the town, a request so that we may be able to negotiate within this collaborative for our the next contract and the tipping fee to be determined. One thing I can tell you, while I wasn't here for the original contract when it was put into place, in 2014, there was an amendment that was made to this contract, and when that amendment happened, our tipping fee actually went down, and that was a big savings for the town. So I can't tell you that what the exact number of towns are going to be as part of this agreement. Right now, everybody's in the same phase of going to their towns to request negotiating. But we feel like this is a strong group and has a lot of benefit. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do board members have any questions?
Just for clarification, I think you said 2017. Is that when it expired?
Oh, I'm sorry. 2027.
Okay, I
Sorry.
just wanted that clarification.
Thank you.
So this is a request to negotiate. It doesn't mean that we're obligated to enter into the contract if it's not favorable or the terms change what our existing contracts are. Are we also going to negotiate separately a different contract, or is this collaborative the only option that we're looking at for future contracts or extending the existing?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for correcting me. 2027 just seems a little crazy. But yes, this collaborative, as I said, started out with the 37 towns, which is part of this 20-year contract. However, the municipalities that are at the table in the past, obviously, 18-plus years, a lot has changed in each municipality. So while we may not have 37 that will participate in this contract, the ability to have power at the table is something that would be advantageous to us. If I can't see that we wouldn't all have some sort of negotiating of the new contract. I don't see us going out separately. We are part of like several large towns. So I think the intent for the group is to get a new contract.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, the request includes the line with cost of legal fees to be included. Do we have an idea of what the value of those legal fees are expected to be?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, until we know how many towns are going to be part of the collaborative, I do not have an amount of the legal fees. However, the group has already spoken with a law firm that is willing to participate as part of the negotiations. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the original legal firms that was part of the original agreement. I know it's tough to move forward in that direction. However, if we're not part of the original towns to negotiate, I don't know if there's a time that we'll be able to come back in. So right now, once we have an idea of how many towns that will participate, then I can come back to you and let you know an update on the proposed legal costs, but they would be distributed between all the towns.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
Yes. Question, so what comprises our solid waste budget? There's the cost for picking it up, the trucks, right? And then there's the tipping fee. So this contract is to negotiate the picking up.
Thank you very much. So you are correct. The main two parts of the solid waste budget are going to be the hauling, which is Casella, and then the tipping is the disposal. So the disposal contract is the one that I'm referring to, the 20-year contract. Those are the two main costs of the solid waste budget, and then, of course, we have staffing cost as well.
So the other contract, didn't we, if we started the contract in 2006, didn't we just renew it every 3 years?
No, this was an actual 20-year contract.
Okay, all right. So I'm thinking of the hauling.
Oh, yes. So the hauling contract, we did have as a 3-year. So the hauling contract was 3 years. This one is 20, and this had to be voted by town meeting, which it was, and thanks to the town clerk, we found the minutes.
And one last, when does the Casella hauling contract end?
That is going to be 2026, so the end of fiscal year. So it's going to be June 30th of next year, 2026.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we allow Auburn, the town of Auburn, to participate in a collaborative of towns to negotiate a new disposal contract for wind waste, AKA Wheelabrator, with cost of legal fees to be included.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, can we move up item 6D? Seems that the director is here and she has another item for us.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Darlene, would you like to come back up and speak on 6D? Sorry.
I'm so sorry. On the way back, I don't think I heard what the next item was.
So 6D. So this is just your next item since you were up here.
Oh, okay. Oh, beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you. So for this particular request, this is the South Central Mass Partnership for Public Health. Just want to make sure I have it correct. So in August, I came before the board to request renewal of the agreement that we have as our regional partnership. So this one is a regional grant that the town is involved in. It's part of the state's public health excellence grants, and I'm happy to let you know that we don't pay anything for this grant. It was a part of an initiative that came out after COVID, and the state recognized that going through the pandemic and having a lot put on municipalities, that they wanted to be able to provide some assistance to boards of health. So these regional collaboratives were created. We have been part of one for going on 4 years. And the IMA agreement that I brought to you back in August was part of that renewal. I believe the amount of the grant is about $504,000. So we have a collaborative of towns that are involved in the grant. And last year, we had to have all of the towns renew as part of this agreement. We had a certain amount of time to get renewed on that. One of the towns that was as part of the original group was Dudley. Unfortunately, at that time, Dudley has some changes going on, and they did not renew. Since that time, they have decided that they would like to come back into the grant. So formality-wise, each town has to bring this back to their leaders to be able to vote to include them in the IMA, intermunicipal agreement. So this involves a vote from the Board of Health and also the Select Board. The Board of Health has already voted on this at their meeting earlier this month, and this is before you to consider.
Board members have questions?
Madam Chair, if I may, not that I want to deny Dudley services, but can you just confirm that if we add them back to this, that we're not losing any percentage of services as a result?
Oh, great question. We're not, we have a regional inspector and health coordinator that we receive services on. It is something that each of the towns meet on a regular basis. So all of the directors or the health agents meet monthly with Central Mass Regional Planning Committee to identify any concerns, any achievements, any challenges, and we actually hear from the staff that help support this regional effort. Typically, we have regional staff each week in the town, so we're very active. We're not going to lose any services as part of Dudley coming back in. And we have our staff here is in contact with the regional staff pretty much daily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, what towns besides us are in the IMA?
Sure. So it's Auburn, Brimfield, Oxford, and Webster is the host. And then Dudley was in originally and out, and now they'd like to come back in. Southbridge is also part of that as well. But those are the main
Thank you.
municipalities. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Make a motion to approve the First Amendment to the South Central Mass Partnership for Public Health Intermunicipal Agreement to add Dudley to the IMA.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well.
Thank you
so much.
so much. I have one document, if I could have the chair sign, that would be greatly appreciated.
Here you go.
Thank you again.
So we're moving back to 6B, a potential vote on the adoption of the hazard mitigation plan.
Speak on that.
Certainly.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to call up Craig Pereira, the project manager for Horsley, and Dr. Adam Menard. So for the past few years, several town employees, the Water District, have been working diligently to finish this hazard mitigation plan. There's countless meetings that we've all attended. The plan discusses natural hazards, wildlife, drought, heat, winter storms, flooding, and it's finally complete. So I'm happy to say that. This document actually helps us get grants. So some of the grants that we've had in the past, because of this grant, is the SAFER grant. We've had FEMA grants for winter severe storms that we've had. We've also had other, like the fire tower grant as well. So the report was long. We sent it to you on Friday. You have the option of voting to approve it tonight, or if you'd like to forward it to the next meeting and look at it a little bit more, you can do that. But if you have any questions, Craig is here, and Dr. Adam Menard as well.
Board members have questions?
If I may ask, are there any key changes to the previous plan, anything that was required to update? Or is it pretty much consistent with previous plans?
It's fairly consistent with the original plan that everybody had the opportunity to look at. The only thing that changed, FEMA likes to wordsmith very often. So they've changed or made some requests for additional changes, but any of the changes that we made were required in order for the plan to be approved by FEMA and MEMA. It's nothing substantial.
Through the chair, do you have any examples of what that was? Is it?
So for one of the things that they asked, when we have in section 4, the mitigation strategy, we have a list of mitigation actions by type that the town hopes to implement over the next 5 years. When you put a line item that you have to, there's standardized bullets that are associated with each action, and one of them is funding. So we had to, we put in that it would be municipal operating budget or capital improvement plan. In order for the plan to be approved, we had to actually state which department or which pocket of money funding that was going to come out of. We also had to make a couple of additional changes to the plan that just speaks to how the town can either expand on or improve their capabilities. So section 3 is a capability assessment. We speak about the existing plan studies and reports that have happened. We take those actions from those plans and carry them forward into this plan so that there's consistency across your municipal documents. They just wanted some additional information included on that.
And through the, from those things that are going to cost, have grants already been identified and we're targeting? I know we need this for other general grants, but are there specific grants that have been targeted with these updates or that we're going to apply for to offset some of those additional costs or funding mechanisms that were required?
So there's a range of different types of grants or funding mechanisms that the town can consider when they are applying for funds. But there's nothing that's immediate. A hazard mitigation plan doesn't really achieve anything other than setting the road, like establishing a roadmap for the next 5 years of what the town would like to accomplish. So there's not a pro or a con. Well, the pro is that once the plan is adopted by the town and becomes compliant, then for the next 5 years, the town is eligible to apply for federal funding, should there be a disaster declared in the town, in the region, or in the state.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have a question. We received the local mitigation plan review tool, but this doesn't look like it's the actual plan.
That's
It was emailed to you.
Oh, the
because
separate-
It's like 300 pages, so.
There's two separate documents. There's the plan review tool, and then there's the plan. The plan review tool is considered a cheat sheet for MEMA and FEMA. We have to identify by section and by page number where all of the minimum requirements are located so that they can have an expedited review.
All right, thank you. That's on me. I went and picked up the materials, and I assume that whatever was in the email was in, but that's fine, yes. I can review it there. That's fine, thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions, but we got this document at the same time that we got the budget. I dug into the budget. I wasn't able to dig into the plan, but I'd like to. So if we can hold this till the next meeting, I would like that.
Certainly. Do any board members have any concerns? Okay, then we can hold this to the next meeting. Thank you so much for the information.
Thank you.
We are on 6C, the vote on the acceptance of the 40B technical grant for Perry Place.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Max Housing Partnership offers a technical assistance grant to municipalities that need assistance with 40B projects. As you have seen in some of the trainings, actually, there was one training that we went to where Judy, she's part of this grant, came and helped us out with some of the things that we need to maneuver through as we go through the 40B project. This grant was awarded in January. It's brought to you for your approval, and I apologize for the delay. It was brought to me last week. But we would like your approval to accept and expend this grant.
Do board members have any questions?
Yep. So part of that training, is there additional items that are taking place with this grant?
Yes, so Judy, the woman that's helping us with the grant, has attended a ZBA meeting. She has performed internal Zoom meetings with Adam, Bob Tatro, Megan, and she's been in internal meetings as well. She will also continue to work with the ZBA as we move forward because, as you know, there are a lot of challenges with each of the 40B projects. This particular project that we're getting assistance on is Perry Place.
So does the grant end once Perry Place decision is done, or is it a possibility that it rolls over? 'Cause we have a series of 40Bs lined up, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you feel.
Thank you very much. It's a great question. So the state was really helpful with this particular grant, just to, once the resource became known to us, they pretty much send somebody in before they even got all of the grant paperwork. So it's kind of a retroactive acceptance. And one of the other big pieces here is that the consultant will actually also help with the comprehensive permit, so that the document, the writing of the document, so they're going to help with that. So this particular project is the grant for $15,000. And once this project is done, these grant funds will be done. However, that they did also identify that we will be allowed to apply for another grant. It's not going to be for $15,000. I believe it's $10,000. But it's like another assistance for another project. They feel like giving these grants will help the zoning boards be able to kind of work through all the concerns, the issues, the community impacts. And then from there, after we've gone through 2 projects with the consultant's help, they think that you'll be able to fly.
So if I can just make a recommendation that as soon as the next one comes online, that we apply right away so that we have the person there for the first meeting and not sort of halfway through the process. I think as much support as we can give our ZBA as possible, the better.
Great idea. Thank you so much.
So I might be confused, but isn't there a mechanism where the developer needs to supply support to the boards to help through the process? Is that different than this? This is strictly training. It's not I did hear comprehensive permit, but again, maybe I'm just confusing it, but I thought there was a mechanism where the developer was supposed to supply resources if requested.
I believe that our consultant has identified that the board can request that. I think for this particular one, because we were already in the process, that may be another assist that we can ask the consultant for the next project.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just to elaborate on that, typically those are for peer review consultants. So the ZBA can ask the developer for money to pay for a peer review traffic consultant to review the traffic report. It's also for stormwater and any other technical reports along that lines. And based on the training that the consultant did, they can also, if we go the pro forma route with respect to the value of the or the constructability based on financing, we can ask for that as well. I don't think it's for either legal or for a consultant to consult with ZBA. I think it's more of a peer review process.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, what organization is providing the grant?
Sure. The consultant's name is Judy Bartlett, and I think it's Bartlett Planning Group.
Who's providing the money?
So the best part about this is grant money that we've been given, but they take care of the state. Mass Housing Partnership takes care of all of the bills. They pay the bills. And we just, we track Judy, our consultant's activity with us. And she, honestly, she's been so helpful and makes herself available all the time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Just one. How many hours is this grant? We have $15,000. How does that break down into hours for this individual? Or
I'm sorry, Dan, I don't know that answer, but I will find out for you.
Okay, yeah.
It's 15,000 total, but honestly, I don't know what she charges because we don't get the bills. But I can certainly get you that
Yeah,
information.
that'd be great. No, because I can just see how quickly it seems like a lot of money, but it's not really a lot of money when you think of the amount of hours that a lot of these projects take.
Absolutely.
So thank you. I'd make a motion, we accept the 40B technical grant for Perry Place.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
We are moving along to 6E. The notice of receipt for Chapter 91 permit for the bridge at Goddard Park.
Yes, thank you. Great news. We did receive the issuance of Chapter 91 Waterways license for Goddard Park. I would like Joanna can answer some questions for you, but this is a great step forward. We have been waiting a while, and I know the engineers have been working with the state to ensure that this gets done. So I'm hoping that as soon as the ground thaws a little bit, we can get the bridge in.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions? I guess there's no motion. Nope. Nothing we need to vote. Thank you so much. So we have no communications. We do have some select board general items. We have interviews for the finance committee vacancy. If we want to start, I know there was one gentleman that was going to be coming later. Which one is that? Him? Okay.
Yep.
So do we want to have? Okay. We're going to start with one person at a time. Do we want to have the other person step out into the planning board room? Okay. I know the chair of the finance committee is here also, so if you would like to come up as well, and have the opportunity to ask questions of potential new board members.
You can sit right up there.
Thank you. Okay. So if both candidates could step up and we could start with Mr. Messier, and then we are going to send Mr. Latondra to the planning boardroom. Thank you so much. Hi, Mr. Messier. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in the board?
My name's Steve Messier. I grew up in Spencer, East Brookfield, and we brought in 2019 we moved to Auburn. We live on 8 Marie Ave, me and my wife. And what got me to start thinking about coming here for the board and all that. There was an issue across the street from where we lived, and so we were here for several meetings with the zoning board and conservation for that issue. So while we were here, my wife was asking me to say, you've been volunteered to be here, if you got a chance to do it again, would you? I spent in East Brookfield, I was on the finance committee for 11 years. I left it because of my mother was dying that year, so I had to give it up. And then we moved to Colorado. So that's what started my thinking about it. And so when this opportunity came up, I thought about it a lot and decided, well, let me volunteer again. East Brookfield was, I met with a selectman. He asked me to volunteer, and I volunteered then. And I volunteer for a lot of things, but those were the ones for the school committee and the finance committee.
Thank you so much. I know you mentioned you were on the finance committee in East Brookfield. Do you have any other special experience or skills that you think would enhance your appointment?
Well, when we were in East Brookfield on the finance committee, East Brookfield's a much different town than Auburn is. We were 2,000 people, and we were regional with Spencer. Spencer's a much bigger town than us, so they had more people in the school committee and all that. So we built a committee because of for the budget, to have East Brookfield and Spencer get together and with the superintendent, to work on the budgets all the time. And I volunteered for 2 years of, doing that, working with the other town and the superintendent and the school committee, working on the budget so that we weren't spending all the time in town meetings talking about it. We had, hopefully had a good plan, which seemed to work out well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to my board members to see if they have any questions.
I have questions. I didn't know if we wanted to let the chair of the finance committee have the first whack at it, though.
Certainly, Mr. Kennedy.
No, I don't have any specific questions other than, thanking you for coming forward and volunteering, put your name out there, and it sounds like this is something you do on a regular basis relative to boards and committees and getting involved, so that's a big step forward.
Yeah, every committee, I did the Little League committee, with, my son was on, so every single one that you get on, you learn things, and the finance committee was the one I enjoyed the most, actually, so, here we go again.
Thank you.
Board members?
No?
No
Okay.
questions.
I will ask the question, it's the standard one. Do you have any time constraints that would affect your attendance at the scheduled meetings and/or any additional meetings as needed? And the Finance Committee meets on Wednesday evenings.
Yeah. This is something that I'm going to have to work out. I work at Lowe's. My schedule is all over the place. So it is something that now that I know that we meet on, they meet on Wednesday, I can go in there and say, hey, if I can have this block of time off, and hopefully they'll be willing to do that. Looking at my schedule right now, the next 4 Sundays, I'm working during the day, so if that continues, then it won't be an issue. If they want to play hardball and, say that we can't do it for you because we can't do it for everybody, then that may be an issue.
Thank you.
I'll say thank you for your service, but no additional questions.
Thank you for volunteering. I'm going to ask questions because I always do. First, have you attended or watched any of the Auburn Finance Committee meetings?
I haven't.
Given that you've been on the Finance Committee before, what do you see as the job of the Finance Committee when it comes to interacting with staff, interacting with town budgets, interacting with taxpayers?
I mean, you always try to, be, true to every budget. I mean, sometimes when, one of the issues that we had, like in East Brookfield, it was the library. When the library was coming up, and they were going from books to basically CDs and stuff like that, or the computers were now being put into libraries. A lot of people thought that, well, now we have a chance to lower the budget there, which wasn't actually true because the state has a law that says that you can't take money away from the libraries, and it goes from there. So you just have to try to look at all angles and make what's the best decision for more or less the town, but also the people that are affected. Like here, it was the library. Being in a lot of the school committee meetings, you're talking about the schools and education, so that was, always a big, wanted to make it sure that it was good that you could keep the schools going, but also you have to worry about the budget in the town. So it was a level, place there.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
I have one. I didn't have any set questions because I always like to hear from the applicant, but you mentioned that you had an issue with some town boards, and that was one of the reasons you decided to volunteer. Can you explain a little more about that situation and why that was a catalyst for you to come forward for this board?
It was, we live on a dead-end street, and there was a property across the street that they took all the trees out, and they were planning to put a house or 2 houses over there. And basically what happened there is that he got a one house permit, and he tried to put 2 houses on it. So we had to go to, so they had a meeting that, everybody in the neighborhood got invited to discuss, how they're going to handle that situation. So it was nothing to do with us. It was a neighborhood thing where the abutters all get invited and can speak.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you so much for answering all our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, is the Finance Committee currently set up with members from all precincts? Are we looking for a particular precinct, or does it matter?
Gosh, Precinct 4, we're lacking a member from Precinct 4.
But it's not required that we have.
Not required.
Precinct.
No.
Right.
Hi, Jordan. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your interest in serving, and if you have any special experience or skills?
Sure. So thanks for having me. My name's Jordan Latendra. My wife and I have been residents of Auburn for just over 10 years now. Currently, we have 3 young children at home, all going through the Auburn school system eventually. The youngest is 9 months. So I've been in the wealth management field my entire career, so going on 15 years now, and just felt like I wanted to get a little more involved in the town beyond the youth soccer coaching that I've been doing the last few years. So that's why I decided to apply.
Thank you so much. Do you have, I guess you kind of answered that you're a financial planner. I will open up to the chair of the finance committee if he has any questions, and then the board.
Sure. Mine's more of a statement. Thank you for coming forward and, putting your name out for this. I think all of our volunteering usually begins with youth soccer coaching. That's where it all begins. And
Exactly.
It just keeps rolling from there. But no, thank you for coming forward this evening and putting your name in for this position.
Thank you.
Do the board members have any questions?
Do you have any experience with municipal finance or government agencies?
I do not have any direct experience with municipal or government finance. So my role on a day-to-day basis is with individuals and families doing financial planning and wealth management for them. Aside of that, I do serve on the board of St. Joseph's Abbey in their investment committee out in Spencer. I've done that for probably 5 or 6 years now. So that's my only other experience kind of outside of the individual families. But no, nothing directly in municipal finance.
Thank you. The resume is very impressive, so I just didn't see anything on there. I just wanted to clarify.
You're absolutely correct. Got to start somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering. Have you attended any of the Auburn Finance Committee meetings or watched them on TV?
I have not attended them. A current member, George Graham, I used to be a neighbor of his up on Saybrook, and he was the one who kind of got me, talked to me a little bit about this type of involvement and got me interested in it. So that's how I initially came about, but I have not seen any of the current meetings.
Okay. With respect to what is your understanding on what the role of the Finance Committee and how you balance interacting with town staff, town budgets, the taxpayer, your residents who might have questions, your soccer parents who are gonna, hound you about, a certain budget item? How do you go about balancing that?
Sure. So I believe one of the questions was around time commitments. Really, there's no restrictions that I could see that would be an issue on my end. My normal job, 9 to 5 during the day, and then just kind of kid stuff at night. So no issues there. I guess the way that I kind of look at it, I went to school at Bryant University down in Rhode Island, was on their Student Senate Ways and Means Committee. And so we dealt, back in college with all the different organizations that are coming through, want different requests for different things that they're doing, trying to manage the budget of the school in all the different areas. Obviously, this is on a much greater scale than that, but that's kind of how I initially look at it.
Thank you.
Do any board members have questions? Then thank you so much. We have one more interview left, and hopefully you will hear from us shortly.
Okay, I will step out. Thank you all.
Thank you. Is Mr. Shar here? I know he was hoping to be here by 8, and we're a little bit early. Would board members be interested in moving along, and if Mr. Shar is able to come to get his interview in at that time?
Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we move up Town Manager Item 9A, which involves the budget. As I see, there are a bunch of department heads.
Sure.
I'll second that.
The motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you so much. The Chief Financial Officer will be coming up to present the fiscal year 26 budget to you.
Thank you.
These amended.
He doesn't have one. Some extras at the end.
I think so.
Do you want one?
What are you, bored?
Said he never retired.
There you go, Ed. Edward.
An additional.
Ed. Nice, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight for the FY 2026 budget presentation. I passed out two different sets of information, the slides for the budget presentation itself, and also a revised set of spreadsheets and information for the budget book. Okay, so I'll begin with the FY 2026 budget presentation. The first page after the beginning there just is a summary of the appropriations and the revenue sources for FY 2026. The excess or the deficit there is no deficit. The excess is estimated at $29,196.68, so we have a balanced budget. The excess levy capacity is remaining at 9.3%, and this budget utilizes the full extent of Prop 2.5. So I'm going to get into a little bit more of the details in the following pages. So the next page gives a little bit of detail of the revenue versus the expenses for fiscal year 26. We have the local receipts, which has an increase of $885,000, 6.96%. Cherry sheet receipts are only up 1.64%, which is $297,000. The tax levy, $2.4 million increase at 5.09%. We net out the debt exclusions, which changed 27,000 or went down 1.87%. And the available funds decreased 1.8 million or 40.59%. And again, I'm going to go through these specific categories to explain what the changes are in here. So the total revenues are an increase of 1.7 million, 2.08%. The appropriations are an increase of 1.7 million, 2.04%. Just to give you a little bit of a breakout on the fiscal 2026 tax levy, we have the base at 56.9 million, the 2.5% increase at 1.4. We added a projected of new growth of $1 million, which brings us to a levy of just over $50 million. The levy limit is 59.3. So the percent of the levy limit that the town is using is 84.30%. Just some items of note on the fiscal 26 tax levy. As I mentioned, it's 100% utilization of the Proposition 2.5,
which is 1.4 million. We're using an adjusted new growth of $1 million. Fiscal '26 is a one-year reprieve on the 1/10 tax levy earmark for a 5-year CIP that's redirected to the operating budget. There is no consideration on the use of the 9.3 million of the excess levy. This budget, as recommended, maintains the current FY '25 excess levy, which was just mentioned. So despite the use of 100% of the 2.5, taxation at status quo assessed value should be minimal given the retirement of the high school debt. And based on sales data, residential home value slowdown, there's a residential home value slowdown, but it continues to be an increase. The next page just shows the new growth average that has been, the new growth has been averaging 740,076 over the last 5 years, but in fiscal '25 was a little bit at a higher level of just over 800,000. So some items on the fiscal '26 state aid, the cherry sheet. For fiscal year '26, using the governor's proposal, there's an increase of 297,659. However, the Auburn state aid 5-year average is 772,570. So as we can see, it's 475,000 below the average. For this current year that we're in, fiscal '25, the increase was 337,360, whereas the FY '24 increase was 166,000. So there is a greater dependency on local revenues and taxation to meet our budgetary needs. And we expect that the state aid will probably be volatile for the next several years. And the next graph just gives a cherry sheet history over the last 10 years. As you can see, we're at 337,360 for fiscal '25, whereas the average over the history has been much higher at 947,000. So we've seen quite a bit of a decrease, unfortunately, in the cherry sheet receipts. So the next category are the local receipts. So the estimates are up 6.9% over the fiscal '25 projected, which is an increase of 885,924. Now, some items to note, the interest income is up significantly due to a high return on investment on the town investments. It's up about $300,000. Now, any downturn in the rates will result in a lower return on our investment. There was an increase in the motor vehicle excise of 339,500. That's a 10.4% based upon the FY '24 actuals. Hotel motel has an increase of 150,000, which is a 20.7% increase. And that's again based upon the actuals from '24 that came in just slightly over $1 million. Since we're budgeting closer to actual because of the state aid coming in lower, this may result in a reduction of free cash due to the estimates being closer to actuals. Okay, the next page shows the local receipts going back to 2023 through 2026, with the level for 2026 being at 13.6 million. Okay, the next revenue category that we'll go into are available funds. Now, the estimate of available funds is down 40.59% or 1.8 million. So we just want to discuss what's making up that reduction. The reduction is primarily made up of one-time use of free cash, 903,000, which was from the fall town meeting articles, OPEB stabilization, CIP, and we're also using 135,000 of free cash towards CIP in fiscal year '26. There's a 329,000 reduction in the use of sewer retained earnings in 2026. There's 140, not, I'm sorry, 490,000 reduction in ambulance receipts. The fiscal year '25 provided cost of purchase of an ambulance of $400,000. So that makes up the majority of what the difference is that's not being used in fiscal year '26. There was a reduction of 180,000 from the golf course retained earnings. They don't have a CIP request for fiscal '26. Reduction of 40,000 from the cable access retained earnings. They also do not have a CIP request for '26. And in this budget is a one-time use of $50,000 from the Eastland Partners impact fees for public safety DDIS support costs. So fiscal '26, these are expenses that the staff requested but are not being considered in this budget. There were 2 firefighter paramedics, 1 DPW, a junior fleet mechanic, a GIS support position, and a parks laborer. On the next page, there are a few recommended positions to be added to the fiscal '26 budget. A police patrol, which would start as of 1/1 of '26, so be half a year. 2 firefighter paramedics, again, the start dates would be 1/1 of '26, so half a year. An assistant golf course superintendent, which would be paid out of the Golf Course Enterprise Fund. And a reference librarian that is budgeted for 26 weeks, half a year. 2026 fixed costs, some items to be noted there. There is a recommendation for a sum of money in the salary reserve for contracts that are to be negotiated. This budget meets the contractual obligations for school contracts. It adds $35,000 to DPW fleet to meet cost escalation for vehicle supplies. The fire department overtime budget is increased by $165,000. The Bay Path assessment is up 4.28% for fiscal '26, $74,167. There is no change in the enrollment of Bay Path students, which is currently at 131. Norfolk Aggie is funded with estimated increases that we were provided with for tuition and transportation costs. And the fiscal '26 budget meets the solid waste collection and disposal costs. So for discretionary spending, the town operating budgets are very lean. There's not much in the way of discretionary line items. But we do continue to address professional development and certifications to advance and position our employees for succession planning. And there's just a couple other notable items that I wanted to point out as how the budget is calculated. The union wages are level funded for FY '26 using the FY '25 rates, as all of the union contracts are currently open. In the budget book, the FY '25 appropriations column that is on the departmental budget sheets, it reflects the town meeting votes. What is not included in there are the Finance Committee transfers and the 1% salary increases that are based upon performance reviews. And in Highway and Fleet, there were some employees that were moved from Highway and Sewer to create a new fleet division. So I just wanted to point out those items there. All right, so the next page gives the budget summary by department of what is being appropriated or asked to be appropriated for fiscal year '26. It goes down by each department. And there are a couple of articles that are anticipated on there for a total annual appropriations, $86.182 million. So first, summary of the revenue and expenses. The revenues in the '26 budget estimated $86,211,275.83. Expenses, $86,182,085. 07915 for an unobligated balance of $29,196.68. As I had said previously, this is a balanced budget. So we will post a copy of this presentation on the website, and I would be happy to entertain any questions, provide as much information as I can. Thank you very much for being patient with going through all of the numbers. I know that there's a lot in there. So thank you.
Do board members have any questions?
We already knew, Todd, that you
I smiled and
didn't
looked at
sleep,
you.
that you didn't sleep all weekend.
You guys don't want to go first? 'Cause-
I'll ask you. So I see we're projecting to have $1 million in new growth, and we haven't been that aggressive in a while in our predictions. We usually make 400,000, maybe a little more than that. Can you address, I know the actuals are about 800,000, but what makes us anticipate even a larger amount?
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm actually going to have Ed address a few things because he knows a little bit more about some of the areas of the budget.
So, thank you. It's nice to be back. Before I get into an explanation of new growth, I just want to say thank you to Sharon for your years of service. I know this is probably your last meeting, and I know Sue is due to retire, so I want to wish you all the best, good health, and happy retirement. So thank you for all you have done to help out the town. In terms of the new growth, we had some early discussions about the level of new growth. Certainly, there's an expectation that we are going to recognize some new growth as a result of the build-out on Eastland Partners, as well as a potential supplemental real estate bill that we're allowed to tax, which is not part of the local receipts now because we didn't know what that value was. But we're counting that as new growth. So there may have to be an accounting shift or a reduction of that $1 million that would carve out that supplemental portion and put it in the local receipts. We just don't know what that is yet. I say that because they're occupying a building every 6 weeks. So a discussion I had with Seth, they recognize that at the point of occupancy in terms of being able to bill out a supplemental bill. So we know we're going to have a supplemental bill. We just don't know what the value is. In addition to that, when you look at our 5-year annual new growth, it's been averaging about 760 per year. If we to maintain that without the recognition of Eastland Partners, that's going to bump it up above, it's going to get it close to $1 million. And there's a review by RRC to review all of our personal property that may result in a bump as well. So I think the collision of those three elements does allow for some positive estimates, but certainly that's going to require some monitoring.
Thank you.
No more? Okay. So I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to sort of hear it out loud for everyone else. With respect to the other exercise / hotel motel, we've been increasing about $100,000 each year. This year, we're jumping it $150,000. Why do we think we're going to be getting, are we predicting more usage of our hotel motel excise taxes? We're seeing that we feel
So
comfortable
our
increasing
estimates are
it.
based upon prior actuals. And our estimates were actually conservative, even though we were getting more in hotel motel. And we know that can change pretty quickly. I think as a result of the full occupancy because of the homeless population, that's resulted in a bump of that. We didn't go to the full extent of where we could go. We held back. And we believe that there's going to be a relocation of those occupants right now that may lead to a diminishment of revenue in the future. From what I'm hearing, those individuals are supposed to be relocated by the end of this summer. So certainly we will get a full occupancy benefit for the first 2 to 3 months, but beyond that is there's some uncertainty.
Okay. So we're predicting the sort of the 50,000 bump because they're going to be there for the first couple months within the new fiscal year, but they don't drop down to normal levels.
Well, actually, during the presentation, I did point out too that in fiscal '24, we received over $1 million in hotel motel tax. So that's why we're going up, but we're just not going up to the full extent.
And I just want to make sure I heard it right so everyone else can hear it right. We've been getting the full excise tax from the hotels, even though the state has been using them for homeless populations or migrants.
That is correct.
So the town
There
has
was
not
some
lost any
uncertainty
money.
in the beginning that we weren't going to get it, but the legislative did support a reimbursement to the municipalities for those rooms being occupied. I think like the CFO said, DOR would allow us to go to 1.1 if we wanted to. That would not be a prudent thing to do. So we're coming off that a little bit in an expectation that the occupancy rate may go down a little bit.
Thank you. Can I just dive into all the other
By all
budget
means.
ones or, okay. In terms of the CIP, let's see. It's probably best answered by the police chief. With respect to the vehicles, we have the $300,000 consistently every year. I know in FY '27, it dips down for 28 and 29 as well. We've all seen the comments, people asking, how many police vehicles do we need in town? Can you just walk through the expected life of the vehicles, the fact that they're used mostly 24/7, and why we need the constant replenishment?
Sure, through the chair. I love talking about this topic. So we've had a very successful program, cruiser acquisition program, that's been in place since before I was police chief. And that acquisition program has been a 3-3-4 process where one fiscal year we'll get 3 cruisers, the next year we'll get another 3, and the following year we'll get 4. And I'm very proud of our fleet management program. Out of the 31 vehicles, not one particular cruiser, police vehicle, is utilized by more than 2 officers. And the reason that our fleet lasts so long is because of that. We're not running cruisers 24/7, 365 days a year. If we did, we'd have countless mechanical issues that we'd have to deal with that would bear a financial problem for not only the police department, but the town. So the cruisers get downtime. So my fleet of 31, we have, of my fleet of 31, we have several that are line cruisers, and as they age out and they become unsafe due to mileage to be a primary line cruiser, we transition them to police detail cruisers. And oftentimes, we help the other town departments meet their needs, whether it be inspectional services or whatnot, where there's a cruiser that may not be appropriate to be a primary patrol vehicle, but it can transition to department inspectional services. So this has worked out very well. I had to address, I've been chief now, February 1st was 3 years. And one of the things that we had to address after I became chief, we looked at the CIP budget and what we were actually paying for police cars. And we had not been keeping up with the actual escalation and costs of these vehicles. And we're, as I'm sure many of you that sit on the board remember, a very lengthy social media post that we put out on how we acquire them through the state bid process and whatnot. But the prices ebb and flow from year to year, but generally the car manufacturers aren't giving us any deals and they're not going down. But the state determines what the cost of the cruises are. We look at what our needs are. I'm sure many of the board members know that we transitioned to GM products. We went to Chevrolets the year that we went to them, which was my first year of becoming police chief. For the first time ever, they actually sank below the cost of Ford. During my lifetime, not to be dramatic, but this is factual and something that I think about. It's what police chiefs think about, is keeping their officers safe. During my lifetime, we lost Stephen Lucas, which is what Southbridge Street, Route 12 is named, is the Stephen Lucas Memorial Highway. He was killed in a very tragic accident on New Year's Eve. And He hit the pole there down by CVS at Goulding Drive. And I feel a little bit more comfortable having the officers have a little bit more steel and vehicle wrapped around them. I work with some big guys. One of my traffic officers is 6'7", and he's a big boy, and he getting out of any other car than the Chevrolet, it looked a little odd. But I've got some big guys that I work with, and our fleet program has been very successful. I thank Ed Kasanovich. He's been super supportive of it. He recognized the need to increase the cost value for CIP to raise it up. By the time we buy a cruiser, equip it with cruisers, equip it with a rifle, computer equipment, safety equipment, first aid, et cetera, we're knocking on the door of $100,000 a vehicle. But, again, I'm proud to say that we have cruisers in our fleet that date back to 2012. We take very good care of them. We're luckier than most towns, outside of warranty issues with the first 3 years that we own the car. We have a very competent staff at DPW. Unfortunately, the police department just acquired Patrick Montague, who was one of our lead mechanics at DPW, and we hired him as a police officer. He's just finished week 6 at the police academy in Worcester. But the staff that maintains and takes care of our equipment, as well as the fire department, we're very fortunate to have that support here in town. So that's my long-winded question on how our fleet is acquired and deployed. So out of the 31 cars we have, just for everyone's edification, the public's edification, we have 44 police officers in town. And for the first time in 20 years, we are at full complement once my recruits get out of the academy.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I keep going?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Roadway improvements within the CIP, the 120,000, I just want to confirm that that's in addition to Chapter 90, so it's town funds that we're adding on top of that.
In addition to the 500 some odd thousand that is permanently baked into the operating budget under the highway department, under engineering.
Okay, great. Do we have an expectation on when we'll see the road list for the next coming season? Or this season, I should say?
So currently, we are looking to add to our list of roads. We have a little bit of a buffer on our current contract, our roadway contract, so we're looking to add another round of roads this spring, hopefully in the next couple of months. And then subsequent to that, probably going out to bid in the fall for our next roadway contract. So we're hoping to get maybe not, double the amount of roads, but at least start on the next year's contract in the fall. We usually have a little bit of an issue of waiting for the state to announce the Chapter 90 money. By the time we know what our budget is, it's already, the next fiscal year, we're already halfway through the construction cycle season. So right now, we're in a good position to add those roads in the spring, have our contractor work on those, finish up that contract, and then go out to bid for the next one. But you should be seeing something in the next couple of months.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow. So there is a plan in place, and you have a general idea of what cost would be per mile or whatever foot. I'm not exactly sure what the calculation is. So as soon as you know Chapter 90 funds, you can get that out the door, and we're not waiting on it. I know the board has supported additional funds, the 120,000. I know we've talked about increasing the sidewalks as part of that, making sure that we're keeping in line with the safer, safe streets or
Complete streets.
Complete streets. Sorry, I was going to say the safer grants, but I know that's a little different. So I want to make sure we're ready and we can get things done. I mean, again, the residents see the roads. That's the biggest impact that we can have on the residents. I know it's expensive and things got delayed, but I think the budget's been trying to fund it, so I just want to make sure we're using those funds in a manner that most of the residents can see action being taken place.
Through the chair, in addition to the roadway project, we also awarded the work for surveying and wetland delineation for Walsh Ave to start design on the sidewalk to connect that area of town to the center of town to the high school. So we're going to be looking to design the sidewalk along on the entire length of Walsh Ave. So hopefully, once the snow melts, we can get the surveyor out there, have the wetlands delineated, and start on design for that using those funds that were appropriated.
Thank you.
So that kind of bleeds into my next for the side.
Sorry, one moment.
I thought this would be a good time just to inform the board. I know the governor has proposed additional funding for Chapter 90 from 200 million statewide to 300 million. That would bode very well for Auburn. That would probably yield about another $300,000, but I just wanted you to know that. I don't know if that has any support. I know that's been attempted to increase that over the past several fiscal years, but that may be a possibility.
I just want to follow up on the sidewalk issue, because that could sort of goes into the next. So I know that, I had advocated for the sidewalk line item to be added, and thank you for keeping it in there. I know we did 100,000 last year in the CIP, plus I think we did 50 in the operating budget. We're doing 150 this year. I know specifically we had residents from Bryn Mawr come in 2 to 3 times, town meeting members as well, and we had asked that be one of the first sidewalks that's addressed. Do we have a plan on where we are with, I think last time we got the update was it needed survey, it needed construction, so do we know where we are with Bryn Mawr on completing that sidewalk?
So the sidewalk, so we constructed a walkway. It has a little bit of a grade, but I know that I've talked to the resident that had initially raised that concern. She was very happy with what was done. So we provided a level area to get around that curve. One of the biggest concerns that I had with respect to safety was that curve, that bend in the road right in front of the wastewater the sewer pump station. So we bumped the walkway out behind some trees, behind some boulders, kind of strategically placed visual barriers so that vehicles knew that if they were going to be going off the road, there was something there to kind of at least let them know that they're going to need to be turning to make that as safe as possible. We do have the sidewalk prioritization plan that we are continuing on. So in addition to the work that we've already done, we're continuing on with the Walsh Ave work.
Was that pathway that was constructed ADA compliant?
No. There are.
So we built a new walkway that's not ADA compliant.
I mean, so a lot of sidewalks can't be ADA compliant to begin with, right? Because of the grade in the roadway grades.
Okay, I'm gonna, rather than go back and forth tonight because we have a long agenda, can I ask that we add this to a future meeting to discuss it? Because I think sidewalks do have to be under both federal and state law ADA compliant. They actually now have to be PROAG compliant. So, and we had specifically requested and committed to those residents that we would be constructing a sidewalk to connect the entire length of Bryn Mawr. So if that's not going to happen, I would have liked a report back to the board on why that's not happening, why the commitment we made is not going to take place, rather than take up the time tonight.
Sure. We will add it to a future agenda.
While we have our DPW chair there, through the chair, have we addressed snow and ice so that there's a very small chance that we'd be deficit spending? Have we put the levels at appropriate amounts?
So we level funded snow and ice as per the initial budget meeting. We've been lucky the previous few years that we were able to fit within that the budget. We're not going to be that lucky this year.
Okay, thank you.
So for CIP, I actually have a question for the superintendent. Yeah. Can you tell us about the new math program?
Yes, so our current math program is really K to 5, and then we have a separate program 6 to 8. And we are at like 7 years with that particular program. We can no longer get the materials that support it. And so my assistant superintendent has led an in-depth study along with a great number of teachers to not only look at the materials, but to visit schools and speak with other staff using programs. So our hope is that we're going to bring in a program K to 8 that will provide consistency throughout. Cutting edge, recommended by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education through their Curate site as being very an evidence-based program. So hopefully we'll be very productive. So we're excited about it.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any other questions for the superintendent. I just have one other one. I noticed that your operating budget is about $155,000 less than what's recommended by the town manager.
More, I think, right.
My math said 150, if
Yeah,
it's more,
yeah.
then it's more. What happens if we can't close that gap?
Yeah, so great question. This has been a particularly difficult year with a lot of unknowns. So I don't know if you're aware, but our first draft budget that went forward was at 5.7%. So we're now down to 4.3, and that's for a variety of reasons. We estimated our transportation bid at 10%, came in at 9. We negotiated to 8. So that was a big savings for us. We had a teacher unexpectedly going to take a leave. We're going to find some creative ways for a year to cover this position. It's going to cost us significantly a lot less money. We do have a couple of positions that we've put in as placeholders that we may not be able to fill. If we have another $155,000 that we have to find, it will come from staff. We basically level funded our supplies. There are no major increases anywhere else in the budget. Now, that being said, we still have some variables, and I know I keep saying that, but we're going to be watching our kindergarten enrollment very closely. So this current year, we only have 7 kindergarten teachers between Packagug and Bryn Mawr because Bryn Mawr had very, very low enrollment, which is unusual for Bryn Mawr. Now, it's unusual, so we've kept that 8th kindergarten teacher in there for the coming year because it's unusual that we've had that. But it has happened before and it could happen again. So if that's the case, once we've already opened registration, we've gotten it out to preschool so we can kind of front load it. That's a place that if we had to, based on our enrollment, that wouldn't hurt our kids. Because otherwise our class sizes are basically where they've been, right? We're just under 25 at our elementary classrooms, and some of our high school and middle school classes are a little bit bigger than that. So we're really trying to keep it status quo, but it would hurt us as far as staff goes. Probably 3 positions at $155,000.
So I've been watching the school committee meetings, but I don't know if our other board members have. So can you just talk about the other things that you've done to generate the revenue to try to close that?
Yeah. So we have done some, obviously we've dug in a little bit deeper to some of our revolving accounts. But when I had met with the town, right, there are 2 things you can do. You can cut or you can try and generate some revenue. So for instance, our transportation fee for our students had not been increased since 2007. So our fee to our families, which we don't ever want to do, but it seemed like the right time, given this budget, to increase that by $25 for each student for a year. So it's $125. It's still less than $1 a day for getting your child to and from school. The other thing that we're going to be implementing are fees for parking at Auburn High School. So it'll be $100 if you want to park, if you're a student and you want to park your car at the high school. It's a very common fee that lots of school districts do. I will say that we have not implemented sports fees, which other districts do that also on top of all these other things. So we are trying to protect our families and balance that with the need for us to do our part to support the budget of the town as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to thank you for trying to balance the taxpayer and the user, the parents that are using the service. You know, I'm glad to see that's coming more into balance with that. I mean, you know, for my sake, I paid I don't want to admit this, it was early 90s, but I paid a parking fee way back in 92, 93, 94 when I was in high school. So I was quite surprised to hear that they didn't have it already. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions for the superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions on the budget?
So I have more of a general statement. I know it's hard, looking at the budget and the increasing and where it needs to happen. I see a 1% for a lot of the people that are doing a lot of the work, you know, that, and then we don't have the union contracts settled yet. But, you know, when the workers are getting or we're proposing a 1% increase, and then the leadership is getting more than that, and they're already compensated a lot higher, that's a higher percentage of the budget. You know, if someone's, a department leader is getting 2% increase, but all the workers are getting 1%, it's a big gap. And it will continue to widen that gap between the workers and the management. So I don't know if more can be done to keep that in line. And again, I know there's a lot that goes into it. The budget is, we're working through it, but it's not ideal to see a 1% increase for a lot of the workers and then management or leadership getting a bigger percentage.
Yeah, can I just, it might answer, you know, it might, as you're answering it might add on to that. So as I was going through this, I had the same concern that we were seeing constant increases for management positions or bylaw positions, but not for the labor force and the workforce that are covered by unions. And my understanding is that there's a certain percentage, you've said tonight, that you're carrying in the reserve fund for as the contracts are getting settled. One, are we carrying enough to equal those 3 or 4% or 2, 3, 4% that we're seeing, you know, leadership get? Are we expecting that that's what the labor force is going to get, or are we expecting labor force is going to come in with like a 1%?
If I may.
And are
So
they getting, when it said, and are we adding COLA on top of the maybe the 1 or 2% that we're expecting them to get? So they're getting cost of living plus an actual increase.
So when you examine any union contract, you're going to see a salary table that not only allows for a COLA, but it allows for a step, and it's always been that way. And there seems to be a disconnect because I'm hearing 1% of non-union, and there is a set aside for union contracts. I'm not going to telegraph what that amount is, well, what that's based on, because that would put us at a disadvantage when we go to the table. I can tell you, even though the salary is higher for some of those non-union positions, the percentage of increase in most cases is greater for those union employees than it is for bylaw employees. Bylaw employees typically get a 2% COLA, I have last several years, with a 1% potential for a successful evaluation. I can tell you union employees have a minimum of a 2% COLA, but they're getting step increases every year that puts, on a percentage basis, greater than union, non-union employees. So when you make reference to the 1%, I don't know where that's coming from because
In the presentation, they said 1%. That's where it came from.
I think 1% is for the evaluation.
Correct.
For bylaw.
For bylaw.
For bylaw.
So again, I'm just concerned about it. And again, reading through this, I know there's a lot of work that's gone into it, and I don't take it lightly, but it just jumps out the way it's presented to me, and I'm seeing individual or bylaw employees what their rate is, and I know I don't see what the union is, and I understand the negotiation aspects, but there are employees, that are maybe not in management positions. I just want to make sure that, a 1% for them is a fraction of 3% for someone making $100,000+. And, I'd rather, in the tight budget times, if we're contracting, I would think management or people that are getting paid a higher wage would need to be compensated less or get less of an increase. That would be my opinion.
So I think we all have to recognize that we've had a weekend to look at this, where you guys have been working on it for months. So some of these questions may, first of all, you've been doing budgeting for 30-plus years, so, we haven't. So we might have questions. That's why we have these presentations, so that we can understand what's going on. But I literally just got a presentation tonight. So, I'm not going to have a lot of questions because I don't have 48 hours in a 48-hour weekend to go through a budget book. But I will ask questions as they come up. But I think members need to, and staff need to realize that we literally got a book of that size on Friday, and I've heard excellent questions, and I heard an excellent presentation from the CFO and the former CFO and town manager. So I'm very appreciative of it, but I think we all have to give each other a little space to breathe, because again, we can look at something, we've had 48 hours, we haven't had 6 weeks to look at this. So I just want us to show each other a little grace when we're having our conversations.
So I just want to go back to Mr. Chambers' point, and I just want to make sure, I'm not asking you to give away the negotiating secrets. I just want to make sure that we're at a balanced budget right now. I think there's $28,000 wiggle room. Are we carrying enough in reserves so that when we settle with all of the contracts that we have to settle with, which I think are all of them except for teachers, that we have enough in those reserves that we're not going to find ourselves in a pickle?
So I think it provides an adequate increase for each bargaining group, although I can't tell you what those bargaining groups are going to do, because they could take it to a different level that may force a greater amount than the town is willing to offer. I think you're seeing that throughout the state. You saw it with the school department, you saw it with the teachers. That is the current climate. That's a possibility, but we believe that there is an adequate amount set aside that is trending with other communities based upon the current economics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep in mind too, that we'll have a fall town meeting. In that meeting, we'll make the adjustments to this budget as we get actual receipts, et cetera. And then we'll have our free cash certified, and we get to use 1/2 of the increase. So we will be able to adjust it some more if needed.
Right. No, I understand we'll be able to adjust it, but we're at 2.5% already with this budget with little wiggle room. So I just want to make sure that we're carrying enough. Because what did the teachers come in at? I just forget in terms of their
I believe it was a 333.
333. So, I mean, we can expect that's going to be the starting point of all those unions, because why would they not start at what we already settled on, a 333? So I just want to make sure we're.
I think it comes down to headcount at that point, and, that's the sad reality. We're up against it, and that's why anything, and again, I hate to use the word claw back, but anything that is not guaranteed needs to be considered for potential reduction to make sure we're not willy-nilly losing headcount. Because again, I don't know how operations works daily. I'll leave that to the professionals. But if we're not getting the results with the staff we have now, either we need different staff or people to hold them accountable for that. So reducing headcount isn't necessarily something that's going to go over well either, but at 2.5. So again, I'm not trying to do, it's a general statement. I know there's a lot that goes into this. I think Mr. Carpenter said a weekend. These are just things that jump out. And I think everyone's in tight times. And I think we said the reliance on state aid is going to be concerning for the future. So we need to make sure there's wiggle room. And if we're going to 2.5 year over year, that wiggle room shrinks up real quick. Thank you.
And I mean, for my part is, well, we hear a lot of talk of, that, taxes is too much, taxes is too much. We get very good services from our staff, and I just want to make sure that we're building in, that we're at least keeping the same level of services, that we're building a budget that doesn't cost us any services in any of the departments. Because I yet to hear any of those same people say, I'd be willing to give up service X. Every time I ask them and confront them and say, well, tell me what you want to give up then. They don't want to give up anything. So I just want to make sure that the budget we're building supports the staff we have and meets the increases that are needed, that we're seeing, that, they're very tight budgets. We're not seeing huge increases, except for here or there. So I just wanted to make sure that whatever we're building in those reserves can actually carry us.
I got to tell you, for the last couple of years, the financial situation has shifted somewhat because of the loss of state aid, because of the current economics, because of the rate of inflation. We didn't have those challenges before. We're facing them now. And it's our priority, or has been my priority, and I know it's Karen and Dory's, to preserve jobs. That's our goal, to preserve jobs, maintain a level of service that we currently have right now, while preserving jobs. And that's become very difficult to manage, especially when we have shrinking revenue resources and relying more on local receipts to fund out our day-to-day operations. That's become a challenge. We have excess levy, but we committed not to using excess levy. But it's there, okay? It is a safety net. And it would have been a lot easier for us to come in with a recommendation that's going to use a portion of excess levy to get us what we all want. But that would not be the proper thing to do, because we want to be able to maintain that level of sustainability going forward through our annual revenue resources. So that's something that, and as you see, we've brought some more. We're less conservative on our local receipts to free up a little bit of that money. We can't do that every year, so we're hoping that the state is going to rebound. They go through these cycles every 10 to 12 years, that they'll rebound, and then hopefully we'll get back to a situation where we're getting our fair share of local state aid.
Thank you. Are there any more questions on the budget?
I have more, I'm sorry. In terms of, so for the fire chief, we're increasing the overtime. We know it's been needed. Do you think this gets us there along with the 2 additional firefighters we're going to be bringing on, or are we going to expect deficit in that as well that we're going to have to fill?
So through the chair, I'm not sure, Ms. Crane, if you saw the Finance Committee this past week. I gave an update to the Finance Committee that as of today, we are in a much better shape than we were a year ago. We currently have no members that are out injured on duty or off-duty injuries. So we have everybody working. We will be sending 3 new firefighters to the Fire Academy in May. 3 of the 4 new firefighters that came in October will be counting towards shift complement starting on March 1st. So we have, over the last several weeks, maybe 5 to 6 weeks, we have seen a reduction in our weekly overtime. At some point, our weekly overtime was as high as $22,000. We've had some weeks where we've been in the $8,000 to $10,000 range, maybe 12. We had another high week because of holidays and things like that. But we are starting to see our overtime trend down. One of the things that, and I apologize, I do not remember whether or not I came and presented the overtime study that we did with the 30 communities. I apologize, but I don't remember if I came before the board and shared the details of that study.
I know we got the study. I don't think it was an agenda
Okay.
item.
Board.
So I did an in-depth presentation, and it was a very good conversation with the Finance Committee regarding that study. But in a nutshell, what we did, the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, Mr. Marshall, he asked the question one night. He said, I'm just curious, what do other departments of similar size, similar call volume, what is the percentage of the overtime budget as it relates to the total salary line item of the budget, and what is the average kind of overtime line budgeted at? So when you're looking at overtime, and we're trying to, and this, I did point this out in my letter, when you're trying to determine the level of overtime for a fire rescue department, it really comes down to two main points of data. It comes down to how many calls are you responding to on an annual basis, and how many people are you trying to do those calls with, right? So in our case, in 2024, we responded to a little over 5,300 emergency calls, and we're doing that with a shift of 11 with a minimum of 9. So we're trying to handle that daily call volume with essentially 9 people when you factor in PTO and injuries and all of those things. So anytime we drop below 9, it's going to incur overtime to ensure that we're at a shift of 9. So we looked at 30 municipalities across the state, and we identified departments, and I wanted to sort of get a range of departments. I didn't want to just try to identify departments that were doing 5,300 calls. So we found departments that had a staff of maybe 20 to 25 employees that were doing 2,300 emergency calls, up into the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 range, and then we looked at a department that was doing 7,000 calls. But we wanted to look at it in each category to kind of make sure that the math jived. Was the percentage of the overtime budget as it relates to total salary, was it the same as a department with 25 people as it was with a department of 50, as it was with a department of 80? And the answer essentially was yes, it was statistically about the same in those categories. So ultimately, long story short, the result of that survey was there were 7 communities that fell into the 5,000 to 6,000 call volume range. And the average budgeted overtime for those 7 departments was $900,000 a year. Their actual overtime spending averaged at about 1.1 million. Now keep in mind, at the time when we were doing this survey, this was pre-town meeting in the fall, we were budgeted at $330,000 in overtime. So you can tell and see that there is a significant difference in terms of what the budgeted amount was versus, average budgeted amount versus what our average budgeted amount was. As I pointed out in the letter, in an effort to try to keep things lean, which has been the name of the game since I got here 18 years ago, right? We try to keep things lean. And we all know what certain strategies are. We level fund a lot of things, and we go back and we ask, and we play this, I hate to use the word game, but we roll the dice and we try to hope, right? And we just talked about it in snow and ice. We did fairly well for many years, but, we lost our hand this year. There was a period of time where, our overtime budget was level funded for 6 years, despite 2% COLAs on an annual basis, despite staffing increases, despite increase in call volume. And I think really what it is we've just come to a point where, we're at a breaking point where there's just no way to adequately staff the department with the amount of overtime that is needed on an annual basis with $330,000. It's just not possible. And last year, as I was at the Finance Committee quite often, seeking overtime transfers. We made the adjustment at town meeting. There was a period of time where, I had an entire group that wasn't working. There was 11 members, well, a total of 12 actually, that and most of them were on off-duty injuries, not even IOD injuries. We had some vacancies. It was a perfect storm that created this situation where, our actual overtime spending for last fiscal year was $720,000. So the other answer to Mr. Marshall's question was, what is the percentage of the overtime budget as it relates to the total salary? The average across those 7 departments, well, actually, I'm sorry, the average across the 30 departments was 15%. We were at 8%. So this year's budget represents a 15% overtime ask based on the actual salary line item, right? So the number is derived from the study of those averages. And like I said to the Finance Committee, and like I'll say tonight, even though the average was $900,000, do I think we need a $900,000 overtime budget? I do not, because there are other areas where we're able to save, we're able to, we make it work. Last year's spending was $720,000, but we were also riddled with employee, outages and vacancies and all of these things. My original request was for 600, I forgot if it was 18 or 19, 618,000, which was the 15% of the firefighters' total line. We reduced that by 18,000 to an even 600. And I will say the same thing to the Finance Committee. That is my best guess at this point. Overtime is a moving target. There are some weeks that go by where we have no callback. And then we have other days like this past weekend between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We did a recall every day, Friday, one on Friday, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. So there are certain things that we can't anticipate. We try to use data of previous years to make the best guesses we can. God, I hope I don't have 12 employees, come the new fiscal year that are not working. It's gonna put us in a critical situation that's gonna drive those costs up. But with all things being equal, right? If everybody's working and everybody's counting towards shift, our average overtime on a weekly basis should be somewhere around $10,000 to $12,000, just with normal PTO, just normal type stuff. You got to remember, training is in there as well. One of the things that's never been calculated over the last couple of years, but we've assumed the overtime for the fleet mechanic. So when they get called, when we call him in, either to fix a truck or when we call him in to plow our lots, that's coming from our overtime budget. So there were other factors that, went into the overtime budget that were never calculated or taken into consideration over the years. I feel right now, providing all things being equal, that everybody's in, I think 600 is a comfortable number. But I also don't know, right? I don't have the crystal ball. This has been, overtime is something that has really bogged us down for a long time over the last year and a half. I really hope that I don't have to talk too much more about overtime going into FY26. But I think this request of 600, this is a huge step in trying to address, 7 to 8 years of really flat level funded overtime, despite all of those other increases. The overtime just didn't grow with what we were doing. And it really put us in a bad situation when kind of all the worlds collided. So, I hope that answers your question. It is my best guess, but I do feel much more comfortable coming into FY26 with 600,000. The deputy and I have looked at it. Again, I think, all things created equal, I think that's a good number. We just don't know what's outside of our control.
Great, thank you.
If I could just follow up on that. Thank you, Chief. I think one of the things that we're forgetting about is there was a change in our insurance coverage through the VFIS policy that provided a payroll benefit that we used to get reimbursed on. And I think because the rate of our claims and our loss really was a detriment to us continuing that policy because the premium just shot through the roof and went up like $200,000. I think that's why we were able to level fund back years ago, because we were getting that reimbursement that went back into the overtime account that really didn't reflect the true expenditures. So when we were budgeting at, say, 250, we were really spending 350, 375 because we were getting that reimbursement that went directly into that account.
Thank you. Through the chair. And that's a great point. And this was a question that the finance, at some point asked. They said, geez, we can never remember you coming back and asking for, maybe transfers, but we were always able to capture it within the budget. And the other factor that went away a few years ago, but it was during that period of level funding, was when we had part-time firefighters and they had a salary line. As our call numbers were declining year after year, there was always more of a salary kind of buffer in there. And I would always annually adjust the salary number based on the actual number of firefighters we had, call firefighters we had. But again, that was dependent. If none of them came back, well, they weren't paid. So that was there. So a lot of our overtime shortfall, we also used to be able to cover internally through an internal transfer from the call firefighter salary line into the career firefighter overtime account. Well, eventually when call firefighters went away and that line item went to zero, that eliminated that sort of potential for us to transfer from one line item to another, coupled with the fact that overtime didn't increase and was level funded. So between the insurance and the reduction of call firefighters, those were two things that were considerable helps in the past to help basically cover any shortfall within the career overtime. And we really never during those periods of time had to seek outside assistance from outside our operating budget.
And I think by programming in 2 firefighters with a start date of 1/1 is going to help also, because that's going to be counted towards the minimum manning. Certainly, we like to do more than that, but the funds just don't allow that at this point. So we at least try to program in something that is going to hopefully minimize the need for overtime.
So I have operation questions for the chief. Thank you for the letter that kind of outlined everything that you're accomplishing in your budget. That's very helpful. The annual report looks at what we did last year. The budget tells a story of what we're doing in the future years. This helps explain it a lot better than just trying to look at numbers. I had a question on the gear. So based on your letter, your turnout gear, you're changing to where previously every firefighter had 2 sets to themselves. You're now changing to a system where each firefighter has 1 set to themselves and then they are sharing. Very personal reason for asking this question, but how much is it extra to ensure that each firefighter is properly equipped with 2 sets of turnout gear to themselves? And did we try to find a way to keep that in the budget?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So you're right, and I want to try to make this as simple as possible. So under the current situation that we have right now, right, if we have 44 firefighters, it means we have 84 sets of turnout gear because everybody has a set. Now, turnout gear, because it only has a shelf life by law of 10 years, or by code reference, I don't want to say law, but by code reference, it's only good for 10 years. However, with the activity and the amount that we wear our gear, we really only get about 7 years out of a set of turnout gear. Between training, actual call volume, we don't get 10 years out of a set. So it's about 7. So one of the things that we've seen, and again, this program was instituted, it was brought to me by one of my lieutenants who is in charge of the personal protective equipment. He approached the deputy and I, and he said, listen, I want to pitch something. I think we have a better way that we may be able to manage the second sets, because you got to remember that on an annual basis, all of our turnout gear is inspected by a third-party outside company. It's laundered, and then the gear gets repaired. And there's a cost to that, so there's a cost. So the more sets you have, the more money that it's going to cost. The idea behind the second sets is, and by policy, if a member is wearing their primary set and they go to a fire and they come back, they decon, they essentially have 24 hours to get their primary set back in. So they have a second set of gear that they're able to wear for the remainder of their shift. But between them or the next incoming group, they'll work with somebody to say, hey, can you wrap up my gear today, whatever. But we really try to push members to get their primary set back in service, because if we have members wearing their two sets of gear sort of equally, right? I'm going to wear it, let's just say they rotate it every other week. Well, now they're going to have two sets of gear that are wearing on the same kind of plan. And one, it's not going to last that, the original thought was that that second set was going to last the full 10 years. The concept behind this program is if we have 84 sets of gear right now, we're potentially going to reduce the second set count by, let's say, 20. So we'll go from 84 to 64 sets, okay? Now, every member will still maintain a primary set of gear. But if they have to put their gear in the wash for the remainder of their shift or the next, we'll call it 24 to 36 hours, they would be able to go into the supply room and they would be able to get a second set of gear that they can wear for that 36-hour period, we'll say, until their primary set gets pressed back into service. When you look at the department as a whole, some of the second sets of gear, they're brand new. They get very little use because, again, we push the primary set. So even if we were to just reduce the gear count by 20 sets, that's a savings of $100,000. Just up front in the purchase, not to mention the annual cleaning, inspection, all of those things. So it's something that we're willing to try. We think that it will work. Again, size difference, we're going to have to, obviously, we have some people that are this tall, we got some people that are this tall. We're going to have to be sort of, get in the range. Right now, every set of primary gear is custom fit to the member, okay? Every set, the first batch of second gear was custom fit to the member. We're gonna kind of get away from the custom on the second sets, but we will have something that's appropriately fitted, appropriately sized. It's not going to be dangerous for the member to wear. It's just not custom fit to their body, but it's going to get them through for the rest of their shift and then what it's going to take for them to get their gear on. Gear is getting more expensive. It's close to $5,000 for a coat and a pair of pants. Massachusetts did pass laws that require turnout gear now not have any products manufactured with PFAS. We did purchase our first set of PFAS-free turnout gear this year. So we have and every new set that's being ordered is PFAS-free. The reality is the model we're doing now is not sustainable for the long term. So we feel that there's a better way to manage the second set piece only. You can never get away, nor would I ever stand here and advocate that we have some sort of a gear sharing program for primary sets. Not possible, not doable. But when it comes to the second set, again, because we're requiring people to push their primary back into service so quickly, we feel that there's a better way to do it where it's going to not only bring down the capital, but it's going to bring down the annual expenses on the testing of that gear. So, I feel like, will this program is this the way we're going to be doing it in 5 years? I don't know. But I feel right now, for cost containment, I feel like we have to do something different than what we're doing now and try to contain costs.
Thank you.
I appreciate that outside the box thinking, trying to find ways to cut. It'd be nice, and again, the narrative definitely helps tell the story of that. I don't know if that's something that can be made from going forward with future departments, but that story right there of these are things we're doing to reduce the cost to the taxpayers, I think that story needs to be told. Again, we don't know if it's going to work, but we should at least be trying these things, so I appreciate that.
I just have a couple more questions. For DDIS, I noticed some extra titles with some people's names. Town planner is now assistant director. Do we have some promotions coming in?
Yes, thank you very much for noticing. So yes, we have in the department, the past year has been quite challenging. We've lost several positions, and there's been some internal changes in staffing. We have gone about almost a year without an assistant director, and through that time and through kind of how we had to navigate the department, we were able to figure out there were opportunities there, and had several employees that had identified that they wanted to take on more leadership. I'm happy to say the town planner, Mr. Menard, who is here tonight, is one of the assistant directors, and also the animal control officer, animal inspector, Amy Contois, is the second assistant director. So I'm happy to put them forward. I'm proud of the work that they do, and I'm happy to have their help to make the department run more efficiently.
Congratulations, Adam. That's all the questions I have. I just one other one is probably answered by Ed. The Youth Commission, 224,000 and change. I know it goes to Auburn Youth and Family Services for services they provide, but is it all related to youth? Or do they provide other services to non-youth and we just sort of bucket it all here?
They provide a whole array of services to the residents of our community, to the students of Auburn High. That's a very, very valuable resource for our community. Primarily, their counseling service for mental health reasons. And we review the need versus what the cost provides for, and quite honestly, the need is greater than the cost we're providing. We did a one-time bump of $75,000 a few years ago. The initial request that we tried to provide them was 100, and we were able to give them 75 and said they had a supplemental grant or something that allowed to bridge the gap between 75 and 100. Was never able to get to 100. We maintained it at 75. We said the best we can do is provide a 2.5% increase consistent with what the annual growth provides for under Prop 2.5. But I can tell you, they're going to tell you that the need is far greater than what we are providing. But it's the best we can do at this point in time.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't doubt the need and the quality of services they provide to the community is outstanding. I just didn't know if this was the full amount or if there was more in other parts of the budget that I didn't just see.
No,
Or did
that's
we
the
lump
full
everything
amount.
in youth? Although it's not 100% related to Youth Commission, we put it all in Youth Commission.
Yes.
Title on the budget book.
What you see is all that Auburn is giving. There are no other pockets of money that they're receiving other than what we gave them through ARPA for the food kitchen, $60,000 for a 3-year period, for 180. And we are providing them some of the opioid funds to deal with the problems that any community would deal with relative to that.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay.
I have others, but I'll pass on them.
So we do have to vote to send this to the Finance Committee, the budget?
Make a motion, we vote to transmit the budgets to the Finance Committee in accordance with the charter and bylaws.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. So we are going to move back. I believe Mr. Shar is here now. Hi. Did you want to come up, and we have a few questions for you?
Madam Chair, before we jump, I just want to thank the former town manager for coming in tonight to go through the budget with us. I'm glad that he took to heart my remark that, enjoy your retirement, but if they call, please pick up. And I'm glad that you were able to come in tonight. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Nice seeing you all again.
Thank you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. It was a great presentation.
So on the agenda, we're moving back to 8A for the final interview with Mr. Shar. If you could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what your interest in serving is, and if you have any special experiences or skills that will enhance your appointment?
It's falling down.
No.
Yeah, good evening. Andrew Shar. I am a town resident. I've been in the town since about 2008. Originally grew up in Connecticut, moved up here, married. I have 2 kids in the town. My wife is a teacher for the town. I do a lot around the town, sports, scouts, the sort, my church, First Congregational. I work for Koopman Lumber, which is a lumber company that distributes building materials around the state. If you don't know, we have 13 locations. I'm a regional manager for them, so I oversee multiple locations. Big into the budgetary process with my company and have been throughout my career. I've been in some sort of management since I was 20 years old, from Home Depot to another lumber company to Koopman Lumber now for the last 5 years. And it feels like the right time to try and get involved in the town. Like I said, I have two young children, one in Swanson and one at Packagug. My wife is a teacher who's been here now going on 3 years in Auburn, and taught in Worcester before that. So I think I have a vested interest in the town. I like it here. My family loves it here. I live right behind the town hall on Arrowhead. And I just think I have an interest in service to my community. And growing up, I was a scout. I'm an Eagle Scout, and it's always been an interest of mine. Budgetary money, those type of things. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open up to the finance chairman if he has any questions.
Same as what I did, said to the others. Thank you for coming out, putting your name forward, expressing your interest in the ball. Selected, it's out for the taxpayers' best interest, but, thank you for putting your name out tonight.
Thank you.
And I'm going to open up to my board for any additional questions.
Yeah, I'll ask the question from our sheet here. Do you have any time constraints that would affect your attendance at the scheduled meetings and/or any additional meetings as needed? The Finance Committee meets Wednesdays.
I don't believe so. Wednesday is usually a good day for me. I try and schedule a lot around it. I do a lot, but I am highly committed to what I do when I volunteer or when I'm involved in something. I coach multiple sports teams for my sons. I'm on the board for the soccer league. I coach basketball, is why I'm late to the meeting in my gym clothes. So I volunteer with the Pac 53 and Troop 53 in town. But I am able to make it all work. From a work perspective, I don't work in the evenings, so that helps too. I don't generally have that. I do travel sometimes, but very, once a year, twice a year type of travel. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Do other board members have questions?
Through the chair, couple questions. Have you attended any of the Auburn Finance Committee meetings, or did you watch any on TV on replay?
I went back and watched a little from some of the, the saved ones. This is the first time I've actually been to a live meeting, so.
And, based on what you saw there and what you just had to sit through with my endless amount of questions, what do you see the role of the Finance Committee is in terms of sort of balancing between the needs of the town, staff requests, taxpayer concerns, parent PTO requests, inevitably your basketball parent is going to say, hey, how come they're considering this? How do you see the role of the committee and you being on the committee and sort of juggling that?
I think, Todd, you actually said it very well in just that little time there, when you brought up the fact that, people complain about the taxes and the dollars and it's going up, and, everybody feels that, I'm sure. But when you ask them what services they're willing to give up, they're not willing to give anything up because we do have such very good services. I myself was a beneficiary of our fire department 2.5 years ago. I broke my leg on the soccer field and got excellent service to get to the emergency room, and would not have wanted to not have them have the funds available to do that. Conversely, I think I'm very good looking at a budget and trying to understand, the monetary restrictions that there are, and trying to come up with innovation, such as the chief brought out, to try and see how we can make things work, at a level that will work monetarily, as well as to keep our services in the town running properly without having to, cut people or cut jobs, where it's going to really affect or negatively impact how the town operates. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Are there any additional questions? All right. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move up items 8C, D, and E, and 9C.
Before we do that, would we like to appoint one of these candidates?
To wait,
Okay.
honestly.
Okay.
We have people that we've kept well past their hours, and we don't need to keep Mr. Kennedy here until the
Okay.
next Finance Committee meeting.
Sure. So what numbers were those again?
8C, D, and E, they involve the town warrant and the annual town meeting, and 9C deals with the Fire Station Building Committee.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. So we will start with 8C, the vote to open the town warrant.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we vote to open the warrant for the May 6, 2025 annual town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well.
And Madam Chair, I vote that, or I make a motion that we vote to close the warrant on Friday, March 14th, 2025 at 1 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. And the final one in 8.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we vote to set the start time for the May 6, 2025 annual town meeting and to set hours for the May 20th, 2025 annual town election. So for the annual town meeting on May 6, 2025, we vote to set the start time at 6 PM. And for the May 20th, 2025 annual town election, we vote to set the hours to be from 8 AM to 8 PM.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question about that? And this is just for my own personal interest, because I've never understood the difference. Why do we do 8 to 8 for the town election and 7 to 8 for the state election? Is there a compelling reason why we do the difference? I figured you'd stay, you might want to come up and, at least make it worth your time.
So the elections have, in the past, been 8 to 8. The state mandated that for state elections, they do an hour earlier. The state reimburses us for that hour. Town elections, they don't. If we were to do the 7 to 8, we wouldn't get reimbursed for that hour.
Okay.
I'll second
Good
the
answer.
motion.
All right. So there
Thank
is
you.
a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. Those are both set. And now we are moving to number 9C. This is under town manager items. Sorry.
It is, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I attended the Finance Committee last week, and we had the discussion regarding funding of the fire station. And when I had left our meeting 2 weeks ago, there was discussion that there would be some consideration of increasing the amount of free cash that was used if it didn't affect our bond rating. So we brought that also to the Finance Committee meeting, who basically agreed with you and said, the same thing. There is a savings already of 1.8 million from going from 30 to 25, but each million is obviously additional savings and interest that our taxpayers will not have to pay. We had a conversation, myself, the chief financial officer, and the previous town manager with Unibank last week, and they basically said it's not going to affect our bond rating if we do use it. It is money in the bank, and they would actually rather see us use that than tax because of the amount that we have in there. They would rather have us use a portion of that than see us tax our residents by borrowing the money when we have it already on hand. So there is no impact to our bond rating. We tried to get to whether or not there was a dollar amount that we could go to before it would affect our bond rating. She seemed to think that we could use what we wanted to, as long as we didn't touch stabilization, which is a much different group of funds that is more regulated and not something that we necessarily want to touch. So the Finance Committee recommended using $8 million. So I bring that to you tonight for your discussion and a potential vote of using $8 million for the funding of the fire station.
So, Madam Chair,
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
much are we saving the taxpayers by using 8 million compared to 5 million compared to compared to nothing? Do we know that amount?
I do. So let me just see. So the savings between 22 million and 25 million is an additional 1.2 million.
And we were already saving them from the 5 million was,
1.8 million. So it's $3 million.
so we're now saving the taxpayers $3 million by investing these funds.
Correct. And just for, at the last meeting, there were a few questions on the account balances. I do want to tell you the free cash right now is at 18.3. Stabilization is at 5 million. So I think that's important for you to know that there is 18.3 million in that account as of today. It is replenished over time when revenues exceed budget, when we tighten our expenditures. And for instance, since 7/1/24, the town recaptured approximately 2.47 in free cash million.
What was that date again?
7/1/24.
Are there any additional questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Now, Unibank is not is not the agency that gives us a bond rating, correct?
They are the agency, the agency that we work with, that works with the bond rating agencies.
Okay.
So this is what they do. I've actually worked with Unibank in 3 different municipalities that I've worked for, and they are financial advisors from municipalities. This is what they do. It was interesting to hear the conversation and be part of the conversation with her. I would have personally thought using all of free cash would be a detriment. I wouldn't recommend doing that anyway, but to find out that they actually would rather us use it than tax our residents when we have the money right there was a very interesting conversation. So they are not the bond rating agencies, but they work very, very closely with them. And I think it was mentioned at the last meeting, they all have different requirements and stipulations. They all like to see different things.
The bonding agency?
Yes.
Yes.
Unibank and the professionals there know that. They know exactly what they're looking for. And because of the previous administration with Ed Kazanovich, Auburn is just in a very good financial position right now. We have budgeted conservatively. We are going to continue down that road. We're going to continue to try to ensure that we continue to get free cash despite the challenges of union negotiations and increased costs. So
All right, thank
Okay.
you. And just to clarify, so we're looking at voting instead of the $5 million that we voted on at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we would instead say, let's take $8 million from free cash, correct?
That is correct.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we adopt the recommendation of the Finance Committee and amend the vote to go from $5 to $8 million in free cash towards the Auburn Fire Station building.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well.
Through the chair. Thank you very much for that vote. I just wanted to follow up on a question that Mr. Chambers had last week relative to the average versus the median. So now that you've taken this vote, that would mean that the town would look to borrow $22 million. When the CFO had requested the difference between the median and the average at all the different million dollar marks, there was anywhere from a $12 to a $15 a year difference between the two. But it also has been suggested to us, just for better calculation, that we use the median. So on a borrowing of $22 million, the median assessed home value would be $394,800, and that would be an annual increase to the taxpayers of $179.19 on a median home of $394,800. So I just wanted to provide that information to the board.
Through the chair, thank you. I did watch the finance meeting. It's very helpful to understand that, because essentially that's half of the town will be paying less than that should this get approved, and the other half would be paying slightly more. So it's not the average aspect. And again, I think during that meeting, there's a substantial difference between the average home value and the median. And it's, again, we have some very high-end homes and we have some more modest homes in this community. So understanding that impact, half the community will be under that dollar amount and the other half would be paying slightly more, it's good to understand and know that it's not just a across the board number. So thank you.
It was very interesting to find the differential in the commercial and industrial. And this does also have an impact on our policy related to a single tax rate. So as we move the factor back, we're increasing the pain on the resident above what we already need to assess. So as we will soon be at that happy day in November, I would just encourage my colleagues to remember that fact, that these numbers, we have a lot of people in town who are struggling. And it's, depending on what happens with what's going on in Washington, which is going to put us all, in a difficult situation if they follow through with some of their ideas. But anyways, that's my only thought. But
Through the chair, if this goes through the voters, I think opinions may sway. I'm up for re-election, so I may not be on the board, but I am well aware of the impact that can have, and as we all are, and understanding how the voter sentiment goes with this when it gets to the voters. Hopefully they'll understand that everyone here is doing the best work they can to provide those services to the community, to provide a building that will plan for the future. I know the building committee, the fire station building committee has done an excellent job to keep those costs in check. When we talk about going from 78 million to looking to borrow 22 million, it's impeccable that we're able to get something that I believe the community needs for a better value in this day and age. So,
yeah, my point is just, it's not a static number. So, and I know that on any given day, the board votes differently on any given year. But the reality is, I think we need to, as we talk about services, is something that we never hear from the business community, the level of services that our community provides to them, that these other communities, which are do not provide nearly the level of service. They don't have the level of traffic. They don't have the level of support. And yet we're constantly being compared to communities that, frankly, nothing against them. They're not just getting a bill. They're actually getting value at town hall for what we bill them. So, I think that's always lost. Mrs. Goodrich used to go through a whole litany at these events, and it's true. The business community can use our parks. Once, Goddard Park and the library are connected, that's now more usable space for those businesses around there to go and have lunch. Because I've lived in town my entire life. I didn't even know there was a park behind the fire station. My entire life, I had no idea, because you don't see it and nobody's ever there. But now that space is usable or will be usable to both residents and business owners. And again, a lot of our call volumes are directly attributable to the blessing that we have of these businesses. Yes, they are a blessing, but there is also a cost to the services, just like as we make this argument with the residents. There are services. A lot of times we say, well, where would you like to cut? Our residents aren't experts on the budget. We can ask them that question 15 times. They don't necessarily have the time or the ability to go through the budget. So when we say to them, well, what would you like to cut? They don't necessarily attribute that to a unit in town or, oh, well, my kid gets to play soccer on those great fields up at Pappas, or, my kids have at the high school, they get to play football on a wonderful, what other communities around us are envious of our fields, that we have, artificial turf. Those come at a cost. And again, our business community is able to utilize those amenities just like any other resident. And as we segue into 40B, when we talk about the local option, that is also an opportunity for those businesses with employees connected to the town to be factored into that local option. So again, I think we provide a tremendous service for both our business residents and our, residential homeowners here. And I just, I'm concerned that we don't have enough conversation around that.
So, while I agree with everything you just said and would love to pile on more, I'm also cognizant that we've kind of veered pretty far from the agenda item, and I don't feel like doing another open meeting law training because somebody files against us. So I just want to be cognizant of that tax classification and the services businesses provide, we're not under that agenda. So I'd like to warn us not to keep going down this rabbit hole.
Okay, with that, we are going to go back to 8A. Are there any nominations for the appointments for the candidates that we interviewed today?
Madam Chair, I'd make a nomination for Andrew Shar to appoint to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? All right, well, there is a nomination and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. Congratulations to Mr. Carr. Next, we are moving to 8B. It is the vote on the Mr. Tetro's request to consult with town council to consider a building moratorium. Are there any questions?
Before we do that, Madam Chair, can we also, right after that, move up Town Manager item 9B, because I'm sure the planner is here for that, so.
Yep.
So we're taking 8B at this time?
Yes.
Okay. I do have,
No, not yet. Okay.
so based on the information, and I know we're kind of in a difficult spot with the way the law is written and occupancy and not necessarily achieving. But I do think we should consider something whether it gets rejected or not. I do believe we, in the spirit of the law, we are complying. We have 3 projects that are currently proposed, a 4th that I don't think is filed for the state. And I think that shows that we're working towards that. And I think at least a letter saying, hey, we need time to plan because of these activities that are going on, that if we're inundated with future projects or things that are going to come down the pipeline, we're going to put our services behind schedule. We already know that a lot of these projects are going to need other infrastructure, and that burden just can't be met in one swoop. So I think a letter at least stating that we need some sort of reprieve at the moment to plan properly and ensure that our infrastructure can handle these projects, because we're going off other departments. The water district is not part of the town. We have to take their word on it. But if all of these get built, will we truly have capacity? I think when they come before us, they state we should. Our calculations, and everything continues to change. So understanding that there are a lot of challenges with this, I think a moratorium on this should at least be considered, whether or not the state agrees, for the reasons I just stated.
Well, I think that is part of this vote, is to discuss with town council what is possibly an option.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, so, well, love a good constitutional discussion and debate. I don't necessarily buy into what Mr. Tatro put forward as our reason for being able to do this. However, I love rabbit holes as much as the next person when it comes to municipal government. So I spent the last 2 weeks doing research on moratoriums and what communities have put forward and what the AG, as you guys know, anytime we pass a bylaw, and these are done as bylaws, they have to get certified by the Attorney General's office, and to see what that office has upheld as of late and what has not upheld. And it seems like a straight give us a reprieve to 40B has been shot down every single time. Most recently, Millbury tried to do an 18-month moratorium for the same reason that Mr. Chambers just laid out with respect to, we have too many projects coming on board. We can't handle them all. Give us breathing room. The Attorney General shot it down, and you can Google, it's a 5 or 6 page letter where she justifies it. But there have been ones that have been granted that are based on, that are based around, we are going to be doing a bylaw change, for zoning bylaw change, for some type of planning that's going to be done, and we need a 6-month window to pass that bylaw and then do a review, a design review guidelines, and put all those in place. So I'd actually like to expand the scope of what we're asking our town attorney to do. I'd like to have him not just look at what Mr. Tatro put forward, but to actually see if there is a legitimate pathway that has a possible way for the town to get the breathing room we need with a moratorium, if it's for 6 months, if it's for a year, if it's for 18 months, and what we have to do that. Because I agree that we have a lot of projects coming online right now, or that are in the queue that we know are going to be coming online. And there are legitimate reasons why we need time to plan, whether it's, water capacity, sewer capacity, emergency response, or some other, maybe there are, I don't know, Dr. Menard might know better, if there is, if the zoning bylaw committee is thinking about changing our zoning rules upcoming that might affect how 40Bs or multifamily buildings in general, that we can leverage that like Amherst did or South Hadley did to get their 6-month breathing room. So I want to make sure that when we ask the town attorney, we're not asking him just on what Mr. Tatro put forward, but we're asking him to look at all the options possible for the town to pass something at this upcoming town meeting for building moratorium on multifamily dwellings for a 6-month period or a reasonable timeline, and what those reasons would be. And then we can come back and see if we can actually do that or not. But I highly doubt, based on everything that I looked at, that they're just going to give us a a breathing room because we have too many projects coming online. Because what they'll tell us is exactly what they told Millbury, which is essentially, you've been kicking this can down the road so long, it's now, coming to your community, and you should have planned it better.
I agree with you. So is there a motion?
Before there's a motion, I have a question because town meeting adopted the MBTA Communities Act, and I think we need to understand how a moratorium may affect funding that we may or may not receive if we adopt a moratorium. I'm not saying stop, don't do it. And similar to Mr. Crane, my research is the same thing. We've had wonderful planning documents, and we haven't pushed those proposals forward. So we need to kind of start thinking about if we want to get in control of this. Everybody would like a single-family home next to them. Well, we don't have inclusionary zoning. I mean, when I was on the planning board, I think we had one cluster development. But there was no affordable housing associated with it. So I definitely think there are tools that we can use to keep us ahead of the curve and decide, as we have these 5 locations that we say, these are our 5 locations. What can we do as a community to make those 5 locations more attractive to a developer so that I want to buy that? I mean,
Just to build off what Ms. Carpenter said, that's exactly what Amherst did. Amherst said that we have this plan that we've done for planning, that we have these locations where we want to promote multifamily housing in these locations, but we need time to make our zoning bylaw match that plan. Give us 6 months to do it. So I think that's the exact kind of thing that we need to ask our town attorney if it's possible to do that.
Okay.
with that, I'll make a motion that we forward these suggestions, requests to town council. And, I would say sooner rather than later, we need an answer. But obviously, he's kind of a small shop, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I respect to him being a small shop. The warrant closes March 14th, and if we're going to do something, we need to know before then.
Well, we can do a placeholder.
So we can do a placeholder but I'm more than happy to second that motion.
Okay.
All right, and may I ask a couple questions too, as we discuss it? Millbury spent a lot of money on trying to get this, on attorney's fees, to get this moratorium withheld, and it definitely did not pass, and the state did not approve it. The Attorney General did not. So I caution us, I don't know how much money we're willing to spend on something that in the end is going to be fruitless. We have to be careful, and we have to have a legitimate reason to put the moratorium on. I don't think that our zoning, is our zoning deficient in the area of multifamily housing, that it needs to be revised?
When it comes to generating affordable housing, I would tell you absolutely 100% yes. It is deficient in our, again, the planning department and DDIS have done considerable studies on this. Our master plan has strategies that we have not adopted. And, the master plan was adopted, the latest master plan was done in 2019. I think some of the same strategies were adopted in 2006, when I was on the planning board. So I think, again, we need to, so twice in the time I've been on the board, both related to the marijuana legalization, the town went to the state and we successfully got a moratorium. None of us up here are saying just throw, spaghetti on the wall and say, hey, this is a great idea. But I do think that it would be to our benefit as a community to look at those 5 locations, try and see if there's anything we can do, take a look at our multi-use, try and use that, leverage that so that we can actually build, have the developer build, and we can add to our, our inventory on a regular basis, but not 190 units at a throw, 152 units, 72 units, 324 units. You know, we can potentially also keep ahead of the curve, that 10% curve, because we know that after a certain period of time, those units will drop off. So we know that we want to continuously add to that number, but at a measurable rate so that we're not having that fall down. And we're living up to our local, regional obligation type of thing. So I think we have a good chance of doing that based on trying to do some work around that. Now, obviously, council knows a lot more about the law than I do, so he may come back and say no, but I think from a reasonable standard and from what I've seen from, I have not done 2 weeks, but I've done some, those are things that the AG has upheld. So I think we have an opportunity to do that, you know.
May we also, may I request that we ask our town council to research to make sure that initiating a moratorium doesn't affect any grants that we might be receiving now or eligible for. I know that as an MBTA community, and we voted that in, we're eligible for certain grants. We want to make sure that that doesn't put anything in peril or prevent us from receiving.
That is part of my motion, Mrs. Kavanaugh.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. I know you want to move that item up, but.
Yes, I'd
we
make a
have-
motion.
It's 8F that we have no proclamations or recognitions. And then if you want to make a motion to move up 9B.
Yeah. I would make a motion that we move up item 9C, which is under town manager item, and it is an update on the status of safe harbor.
B.
Sorry, that's 9B.
9B.
Yeah,
I can't read tonight, so.
okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well.
Thank you. So before you is a spreadsheet that was prepared through our planning office and DDIS that outlines the current projects and the current housing that we have that fall under the affordable housing 40B measurement. So it's really important that you know this is not a certified list. This is our list that we're going to be working. It's going to be a changing document. Some projects will be taken off, some will be put on. But it gives you an idea of where we'll be at certain times, depending on when these projects will go to completion. It doesn't have all the projects, it has the ones that have already gone through the state. So I wanted to give this to you because it's been a topic of discussion on this board for the last 2 years. When the first 40B came up at Perry Place when I first started. And I think it can be used as a tool for us to monitor and see how the number fluctuates and also give us the number that we need when we do go to the state to say that we're reaching or we're getting close to safe harbor. So if you have any questions, I do have our planning director here and also the director of DDIS.
Do board members have questions?
Yeah, could I make a comment? For anyone who might be wondering this question, I know we've mentioned it before. I've had people ask, why we have a lot of we have several mobile home parks in town. Why aren't those counting towards our affordable housing units required? That's because those are not deeded as affordable housing. So that's why, for our members at home, that's why they do not count.
Although there was legislation, and I believe there's legislation again, moving to list those as included in affordable housing.
Representative Frost had a bill, and going back 20-plus years, Bill Gribbons worked on this as a selectman over his two terms trying to get those items or those houses added, and as we see, it's still not.
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, I know that they did file, again, all the bills had to get refiled again because we're in the new session, and one did get refiled to do that. But also, The state in of itself is going through a 40B rewrite process. So that's another avenue where they might start getting factored in as well. But the holdup is that they're not deed restricted to be affordable housing. And let's be quite honest, I've said this numerous times, affordable housing is not always affordable when we just allow them to be 80% of AMI instead of 60 or 50 or 30%, where we actually think of true affordable housing. But we'll see what happens.
Through the chair, may I ask, so this says 112 units are pending certification with the state. In order to get to safe harbor, I believe a meeting maybe 6 months ago was talking about 70 units per year were needed for that. Do we know when this certification would be done, and do we qualify for safe harbor at that point? Because I believe occupancy is, what I heard tonight was every 6 weeks a building's coming online.
So none of the Albert Street units will count towards safe harbor. Those have fallen past the first year they're allowed to be in safe harbor. Those units just going to be certified to be added to the total SHI to eventually get to 10%.
So a builder can go through comprehensive permit, take their time building, come off the list before even doing construction, and don't count. So essentially, these other future projects can just go through the permit process and sit and continue to look at the 5 locations that we might want housing.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that needs to be addressed in a letter, because again, the spirit of the law or the 40B is not to get inundated, it's to make progress towards. And I think this town has shown that we're making progress towards, and if we're not getting the help or support, then we need to take a legal action on that. And again, I'm not looking to waste taxpayers' money on a fight. I think we have good grounds to say the spirit of the law is here, and we need to make sure that we're not overburdened, because the share of 40B is 10% per community. If we're the only one besides Worcester, I think that meets that demand in this area, then they need to start developing other places, my opinion.
I think Millbury would take issue with that comment because they've certainly been inundated with 40Bs.
No, but I agree with Mr. Chambers. The spirit of the law is not, and obviously Dr. Bernard is not his fault, it's nobody's fault at this table, but if we, as a state, are rewriting some of these things, then we should be sending comments in as a community and saying, hey, this is how things are fleshing out. And I had mentioned to the town manager, you know, if there's a delay in the developer, that 1-year clock shouldn't start because the developer or the state held, for legitimate reasons, perhaps. I'm not saying that it's some, you know, deliberate attempt, but that clock shouldn't start until the state process is done. And as long as construction is ongoing and we know that we're going to be getting units, I think we should be given at least partial credit towards whatever the safe harbor is. So food for thought, but I think we as a board need to work with town administration to try and weigh in with our legislators on that and try and see if we can, as well as talk to our friends in Millbury and other towns. You know, I know Grafton has quite a few developments as well. So, you know, strength in numbers, let's work with our neighbors and see if we can't get it across the finish line.
Are there any additional questions?
My comment wasn't really to go force it down other towns' throats. I'm just saying there are plenty of people dealing with this, so.
Understood.
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. So we are moving back to 8G. We have gift acceptances.
Make a motion that we accept a donation to the animal shelter in memory of Beth Prouty in the amount of $100 from Matthew and Joan Bushy. Also, another gift to the animal shelter in memory of Beth Prouty from Karen Prefontaine in the amount of $100. And a gift to the animal shelter in memory of Beth Prouty in the amount of $50 from Kenneth and Joan Henriksen with our gratitude.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. There is a second DPW.
Yes, I'd make a motion that we accept with gratitude and that a letter be prepared for the chair's signature. That we accept a gift of $1,000 from Southbridge Credit Union to the Summer Concert in the Park Series to the Rec and Culture Department.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well. We are now jumping down to number 11A under member items, and I will pass this to you, Mr. Carpenter.
So it's that time again, and Danielle is sitting here, so I can say thank you. She's been helping with front-loading some of our planning, we'll say. So I was a little premature in my request, but I figured it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission for certain things. So we have a date of Monday, April 7th. We have the room reserved. It is the presentation room at the Auburn High School. It will begin at 6 o'clock. Remarks by the town manager. I will probably make remarks on behalf of the board unless someone else would like to do that. We do not have anyone. I know last year we had 2 very deserving people to get recognized. Obviously, we have time to plan that. So if you would kindly vote to set the volunteer appreciation event for Monday, April 7th.
I make a motion that we vote to set the volunteer appreciation event to occur on Monday, April 7th at 6 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is yes as well.
I make a motion, we vote to appoint Heritage Cafe as the caterer for the volunteer appreciation event on Monday, April 7th.
A very happy second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well.
And I vote, I don't know if we need a vote, I vote we designate Mr. Carpenter as board liaison for the volunteer appreciation event on Monday.
Very happy second, and a thank you for doing this.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. We do have a second member item by Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, so in discussing with the town manager, the situation on Athens Road, and this was actually her idea, so I'm not going to steal it, but typically under the LIP process, we have a public information session. This public information session would not be a board meeting. This would be similar to the traffic events. Obviously, it would be great if the chair or the vice chair would sit on the dais, that we could invite Mr. Frost and Mr. Moore or their designees to this event. But I think it's very important that the folks get good information, and I appreciate the update on the website, the 40B website, and I've directed a couple people to that already so that they can be well-armed when they come to the meeting with understanding the process and the limitations that we as a community face. So I would just, with the board's indulgence, make a motion that we, well, I don't think we have to schedule a public meeting, but.
Can I just ask a couple questions about this?
Sure.
Are we looking to do this before our next meeting when we have to have the letter ready for approval?
It's going to be
and
March
send?
3rd.
Okay.
That's going to be my recommendation.
Second, can we ask the relevant department heads to attend the meeting as well?
Certainly.
Could I also include, if we could,
But then,
if Paul Frost or Mike Moore also able to attend?
so I would,
So if I'm not mistaken, the other boards have been asked to comment, is that correct? For input, I thought the planning board had an opportunity for comments as well. I don't recall zoning, it might have come up, but I just didn't know if any information flowed through them that way, or if there would be any issue making them aware of it, this potential meeting, and I don't know.
Inviting them
that
to
was-
attend.
so that was going to be part of my motion too. Was to notify.
Well, so, and I don't know, again, it will be a meeting, but it's not a zoning board, and I don't know if
No,
they,
it's just to have people here so that they can hear and they may want to comment, or, conservation can't do a hell of a lot with, 8 inches of snow on the ground. There might be some historical data if they've ever walked up there, but I'm not aware of any project on that stretch of road, Athens Road, when I was a member of the planning board or a member of the Conservation Commission. It has been a few years, so I don't know what, if they had gone for a delineation of wetlands previously, which obviously that can still migrate over time. So Concom will need to take a look at that anyways when it comes in, but it would be good to have those folks in the room. Or at least give them the opportunity to be in the room. So anyways, I would make a motion that we schedule a public meeting with town officials and residents of the Athens Road area to discuss the proposed 40B development on Monday, March the 3rd, in the Board of Selectmen room, that we notify the school department and the relevant land use boards, including the Board of Health. Obviously, we would be notifying the emergency management director and the like. 6 o'clock is a good time, I would think, and that we notify the abutters. I was going to make a big ask on this because I talked to one abutter who did not get our notification, and I explained that the state doesn't notify you of the walkthrough. But if it's at all possible to do a hand deliver to, because we know that the post office is experiencing delays, so that they get notice, well in time. So that would be my motion.
I'll second. I would just caution on the hand delivery. That's a big ask for, if you're able to do it, great, but I would like to see, if not, then mail out as soon as possible to get it out.
Yeah, we're talking about 10 houses. I mean, there might be a few houses on Appleton, and then they can spread the word from there.
Well, are we doing the 300, like the normal, or are we doing the higher level that we had asked for Wallace Avenue, where we asked them to do a larger radius?
So
Ask
I believe on Athens, we had asked for 600 feet.
600.
But also on Athens, the abutters are also on the other side, even though it doesn't come down that street. The property goes Prospect Street, so I think it needs to be at least 300.
I don't think that property goes to Prospect Street. That's a
No,
whole
Appleton
other-
Road.
Yeah.
Appleton
okay.
Road, yeah, it goes
No,
up.
correct. No, but it goes pretty close, so it's in that swath.
Oh,
where Prospect-
there's a lot of people that will be impacted. I don't disagree. I mean, if board members want a specific 600 feet, 1,000 feet,
I think we need to set a distance or
I will
notifying.
include in the motion 6. And if we can, try to do hand delivery, just because we don't want people getting it Tuesday, March 4th, I don't think we're talking about a huge number of houses. I know that it's an ask of somebody to go out and do it, but I mean, it's a pretty quick,
Can I also make a recommendation that DPW, after Friday, because Sharon and Sue are retiring on Friday, and they have their big thank you board out there. I don't know if you saw it. Well-deserved. But on Friday, DPW moves that up to Appleton Road and has the information on the meeting put on it.
excellent idea. I'm happy to include that.
Put it on our website, I hope, too.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is for
not going
600
anywhere.
feet.
Still staying.
I thought you guys had already retired, so when I came in the building today, I was coming out as Sue was going out. I was like, "How was your quick retirement? Welcome back." And she's like, "It hasn't begun yet."
Oh, it has to be the
right.
week of Friday, right?
Just as a comment to Mr. Carpenter, I'm sorry to interrupt. There were 70 abutter letters that went out about the site walk, just for some information.
Well, we're talking about 600 feet though, so.
I get it.
It's fine.
And it
If
was
you
over a
can't do
holiday
it, that's
weekend,
fine.
So that
but-
makes it a little bit.
But the reality is, if we send out 70 pieces of mail and it gets there the next day or the Wednesday after, it's not really going to help any of those people come to our meeting. So anyways, that's just an ask. Let's see if we can do it. If we can't, then, I think the sign idea is a great idea. That'll notify people so that, so we can just mail it. I'll drop because we're moving the sign, so they'll get something much better.
So there is a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. We have no second public comment. We have no meeting minutes. We just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Hold on.
So I think other people have taken the opportunity. I want to thank Sharon and Sue for their time. I know it's not on here, but enjoy your retirement. Thank you for everything you've done for the town over the years.
We'll see her.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Well,
But it's
we may
greatly
not see you
appreciated.
next week, but
It'll be,
we know we'll see you.
Yes.
it'll be strange, Sharon, to not see you at one of these meetings.
I'm sure she's not going to miss it at all.
22 years on the finance committee and now select board, and I think you've been at every single one of them.
And you
So we're
left
gonna, yes, so we're gonna miss you.
We kept your last one here as long as possible.
Keep the party going.
There is a.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
There is a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The chair is a yes as well. We are adjourned.